What's up, everyone? As you can see, Jesus Christ. As you can see, I have not tweaked the settings on my camera, and I was out of town, so now I have to figure out what the hell I changed so that this looks okay. Going to 800. Okay, now let's maybe go, just bear with me for a moment while I figure out where I want this to be set. 500. Let's see, is that too dark? Are we getting like emo over here? I also gotta figure out, oh, you know what I did? So let's turn that one off because it crashed on me. All right, everybody hold on for 1 second, because do you see this? That is very annoying, and I want that fixed. So just hold on. All right. Can I fix that? Hold up. I need to. You know what? I'm okay without a hair light. Like who's even got hair to light at this point, right? Not me. Okay, we're here. We're back. I'm going to take these off and set them down over here somewhere. Just don't worry about it. Everything's fine. I screwed up my frame and it's pissing me off. Let's see. Are we meta streaming today where I screw with my camera settings? I think we might be. All right, everybody hold for just a second while I fix this, because I'm off kilter a little bit. Like you can see here, everything is a little bit off. Like this should be straight up and down, and it's not. Like you can see this little chunk of my desk here, and then it's at an angle, so I have to fix that or it's gonna make me wild all day. So hold on. All right, how's that? Slightly better. Gotta come up a bit. Okay. We're gonna call that good enough, and then I need to fix my focus, which requires me getting into this app that has to use like Bluetooth or something, and it's the slowest app on the planet. And then, how about that, everyone? How are we feeling? That feels okay. All right, I think this is good enough. We're gonna call this good enough. I have things I want to fix, but we're not fixing them today. Okay. All right. So hello. It's been like a month since I've done one of these. This is, I'm looking at my camera now and it's like comically, I just have to ignore it. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything's probably fine. Oh, God damn it, I can't ignore it. Okay. Okay, now we're level. Everything is fine. Thank you for bearing with me. I got back. So I guess, where the heck have I been? Because I haven't streamed since, what, June? What day is it? It is July. I feel like the last time I streamed would have been June 6th. Yeah, June 6th. So it has been almost a full month since the last time that I went live. And for good reason. I pretty much immediately after that June 6th stream, I think on the 10th, I left for a conference. And I went to, it's called Edge Esmeralda. I went because Marissa wanted to go. And Marissa was very excited about this one because what it said it was going to be was like the future of urban planning and development. And when we got there, it was more of like a techno optimist, weird, like immortal cyborg convention. Not really our scene. So we instead we hung out it was in Healdsburg, California, which is like an hour and a half north of California, so, up in wine country, right? So instead we just had a nice little few days in Healdsburg because that conference was frustrating. Like you know when you hear somebody who's like, the argument they're making is basically like, once we figured out how to make me immortal, I'll finally like myself. And it's like, hold on, because if you don't like yourself now, imagine how you're going to feel in 400 years. Anyways, so yeah, hung out in Healdsburg. And then we went to Render ATL. Render was amazing. I was able to do a little documentary project with Johnny J. Jones, one of my favorite creative partners. And that is coming out. I'm actually going to record the voiceover for that today because I'm finally home, and that should hopefully come out in a week or two. So fingers crossed there. And then from Render, came home for like a day. I filmed another episode of Web Dev Challenge, which thank you all for watching and sharing Web Dev Challenge. It has been such a pleasant change of pace to release something like that and see the response that it's gotten, because a lot of times I feel like I'm putting stuff out and it feels like I kind of made it for me, which is okay. That's why I make this stuff. But it's nice when something resonates. So thank you all for watching and sharing. I really appreciate it. So we filmed another episode of that. That's 2 more coming now that are fully filmed and in editing. And then we left for Cascadia JS. So we rode the train from Portland to Seattle. That was super fun. There were like 15 people on the train. Then Cascadia was, great. It was a great event. I got to give a talk there. I believe it's on YouTube now if you want to see it. Then we went immediately from Cascadia. We were home for like 18 hours or something. And then we went to Config in San Francisco. And that was a great event. Cassidy Williams and I hosted the Dev and Code track. Lots and lots of fun. It was super, I didn't actually see very much of the event because I was like backstage, doing costume changes and planning for the next speaker. So I didn't see a ton of the content. The bit that I did see was good. Also, tons of people. And then we got home like 3 days ago. So we've been on the road effectively. It was like 20 days, 21 days, something like that. And so we're finally home. We're finally here, and I'm back. I'm streaming, and I'm so excited to be back. But as you may have noticed at the beginning of the stream, I got back and realized I had torn everything apart for the Web Dev Challenge filming and wasn't actually ready to go. So I started late because I was trying to like get everything rearranged. My lights were all over the place. And then as most of you got to witness, I had so many camera issues. So anyways, we're back. We're here. An immortal cyborg convention. Okay. So, okay. So I do not I don't want to talk trash because there is good underneath all of the hype of a lot of this stuff. But one of the things that I don't particularly care for right now is this, it's this school of philosophy that is happening around the very rich and the very young. That's this sort of it's a combination between long-termism, which is the idea that the only purpose of being alive is to ensure the continued existence of the human race, which at first sounds really noble until you realize that what they mean is ensuring that the human race continues far, far into the future. And if that means that you have to sacrifice a couple billion people today, so be it. It's a horrifying philosophy. In fact, it's part of why like the billionaires now, instead of, building housing or public services or, parks or libraries, things that rich people used to do to help humanity, why they're instead building like rockets so they can go colonize Mars, and why they're trying to have like 9 million babies. It's the idea that they need to ensure that their genes exist long beyond the death of the planet that they're killing, right? So they have to go colonize Mars so that they can handpick the chosen ones to bring humanity to the galaxy. Truly like a bleak, cynical, dystopian philosophy that really bums me out. And then on top of that, you've got this other like kind of the Ray Kurzweil style of use technology to become immortal by mapping the human brain, by being able to upload consciousness, by replacing body parts with robotic parts. You've probably heard some of the like funny stories about people like Peter Thiel who get blood transfusions from 19-year-olds in an effort to like stay young. Weird stuff like that, right? Where they're trying to become immortal cyborgs. And so when you go to a convention that's full of like 20-somethings who are putting up slides where they're talking about like what the future is that they want, and the future they want, they're listing things like The Expanse, which is not a utopia. They're listing things like The Culture, which is definitely not a utopia. And they're saying that this is what we should be working toward. It's like, did you not read those books? Like, that was horrifying what happened in those books. Anyways, so it's a convention full of people running at that future as fast as they can and having like no interest or kind of concern for what it means in the short term. And guess who just showed up? I just saw Jack Herrington roll into the studio. So why don't I scoot this way? Do you want to grab a chair?
Sure, man. Jason thing here. Which chair am I taking?
Well, there's an actual office chair right there you can drag in. You can sit on the stool if you want.
I mean, it's got some comfy features to it. Hey, man.
What's happening? It's good to see you.
I'm good to see you.
Most awkward hug I've ever given.
I'm sorry.
All right, so let's
How's it
see.
going? You're hacking on Astro and.
Well, that's the eventual plan. We're actually currently talking about the like dystopian philosophy of like.
I love it. Whatever it is.
Have you
dystopian philosophy? I'm in.
Are you familiar with long-termism?
No.
It's like the Elon Musk it's like that Elon Musk thing where they say like if I need to ensure the future of humanity, so I need to colonize Mars, and if I have to sacrifice a couple billion people today to get to that future, I'm okay with it, right? Like
that's
real
dark,
real
that
dark,
is
right?
dark.
So anyways, I accidentally went to a conference that was like all folks like that talking about building the future. Their future that they wanted was like The Expanse. And I was like, wait, the one where they created a basically indentured servitude class in the asteroid belt? That's not a future you should be aspiring toward.
What conference is this?
It was Edge Esmeralda in Healdsburg. What we thought it was, we thought what we were going to was a conference that was more about like the future of cities, the future of urban planning, stuff like that. And
why would you even go to one of those?
Well,
like you're not a civil engineer.
Marissa's really
like my dad would go to that conference.
Marissa's really into that stuff.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So she picked that one, And then we got there and realized that, oh, that's not what this is about at all. The first presentation was about like mapping the human brain so we can be immortal cyborgs. And it was like, oh my God, I hate this.
Oh my God. That's like when you go to one of those things where it's like, it's clearly like somebody, oh yeah, I want to bring you to this thing. And then it turns out like a timeshare thing. You're like, oh my God. Christ. How fast can I get out of this thing?
Oh my goodness.
You know?
I know.
Ugh.
It was great. It was, I mean, ultimately we ended up having a great time in wine country. So, you know, no real loss.
Yeah, no harm, no foul. Although, oh my God, have you ever gone to the Vintages out there?
No.
Oh, it's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, go check
right.
go check it out. The Vintages. It's a trailer park resort.
What?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we've gone a couple of times. You can get these like classic trailers, the Vintages. Yeah, there it is.
Vintages Trailer Resort.
Yeah, it's really cool.
All
It's
right.
like I don't live in a trailer, so it's like it's a unique thing to me. But it's very cool.
What a terrible.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Like,
Let's get rid of that and just drop the.
There you go.
This is.
But it's right outside. I think it's right outside of Healdsburg. So it's like you're in wine country, but then you can, and they've got like fire pits and stuff, and you can get like, s'mores fixins, and it's like it's fun, and it's all very spa-y,
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I can see.
Yeah.
I can see.
Go down there. You can see like the different. Oh yeah. There you go.
Oh yeah. Like so, these are like vintage Airstreams.
Yeah. Like way like not even just Airstream. Like way exotic type. I guess
That's really fun.
Yeah, it is.
My grandparents used to have.
Yeah, I don't know why they picked like a tub as their thing. Like on
it's a little outdoor bathtub. That's great.
Yeah. That's
but yeah, I think my grandparents used to have one of those Airstreams, one of those silver bullet ones, and so we'd go. They were part of whatever the like trailer towing equivalent of a biker gang is. Like they'd just meet up with a bunch of other people who had Airstreams and drive them around to different camping grounds.
Yeah,
it was wild. I got to see. We went to like different parts of like rural Wyoming and Utah and Montana and stuff. We'd just go pull up to a campground somewhere in the middle of absolutely nowhere and just like party with my grandparents.
That's awesome. Yeah. Actually, yeah, my daughter just graduated from OSU, and now she's looking to do some adventuring in that space. So, yeah, Montana.
It's a good spot. So
classic camper convoy. Okay.
So let me just pull this. I'm gonna. Oh wait, didn't mean to pull it over there, but we're gonna.
Don't build a freaking chatbot. How's it doing for you? Like, what's it up to now?
It is doing great. I will.
Like the last time I looked, it was like 14x. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, it's doing a lot. We're up
31, dude. 31.
Yeah. So this
you guys don't even understand. Like on sponsored content, 31 is like is next level.
And we're talking about it just crossed 31,000 views on
That's
YouTube.
crazy.
And so the show, which I just shared in the chat,
902 subscribers.
Yeah, dude, it's going.
Yeah,
like it's going.
Do you ever
fast.
talk about your financials on this channel? Kind of like mention that next column.
You can if you want.
Okay, so like what folks don't understand, they think like YouTubers make all this money, like we're just loaded and stuff, which is like totally ridiculous. Like you're getting 31,000 views. And for that, you're getting $85.
Yeah,
right?
I'll actually share the screen so you can see what I'm talking about.
I don't know if you want to, like, I can't imagine you want to talk about the actual financials, what it took to make that show, but like $85 in comparison to that has to be like, like fractional at the extreme.
Yeah, so the financials of a show like that it's not cheap, right? Like so to do the show and for folks who want to see, let me mute this, but we'll you can kind of get
like look at that. Look you see them for a second. You see the two people who are like walking. Like, he's got two camera people.
Let's go back.
He's got an audio person. He's got an editor that must have spent a good
long time.
Yeah, a long time. It felt like it was 2 months to go and put this thing together. And then not to mention your own time and our time, and it just like.
Yeah.
It's just boom, 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 boom.
So it ends up being, for something like this, we've got the director of photography, we've got an assistant camera, we've got sound department, we've got a production assistant, and then we have
Good
editing.
God.
And
Who's
then
the production assistant?
the production assistant on the one that you were on was actually Marissa.
Okay, I was gonna say,
in
was it
follow
Marissa?
up,
Like,
in
okay,
follow up
I think it's
episodes,
nice free
I've
labor.
hired a real
really?
production assistant
Holy
because
moly.
you need somebody to like go.
Have you shot more episodes?
Yeah, I've got two more shot in editing. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But so all in, like for example, a director of photography also has like a camera kit that you rent, right? So all in, it's like $2,100 a day for director of photography. Then assistant camera, it's like $700 or $800 on top of that. Sound is like $1,100. Editing ends up being like $5,000-6,000. I'm paying for travel, hotel, for meals for people, all of the stuff that goes into the studio itself. Like, you know, we bring in snacks, we order lunches, we order coffees. So all things considered, it ends up costing over $20,000 to make one of these.
That's actually on the light side.
And,
I actually thought it was gonna be at like 30.
And I think that's because like I'm the producer, I'm the writer.
You're not accounting for your own time.
I'm doing like basically my hourly rate after sponsorship ends up being like $7 an hour, but
which is high.
Which I mean, I'm happy that it didn't go negative. But
absolutely.
so I you know, it's the sort of thing that it's sort of a lost leader right now. Like I'm doing it because I know it's the right thing to do. I'm able to break even on costs because, you know, DataStax was great. They were willing to sponsor it at a rate that let me take at least something home.
Yeah.
And, you know, off of the success of this, I'm having lots of meetings. Even later today, I'm talking to companies that want to do more. So the hope is that we'll see a lot more of this coming in the future. We've got at least 2 more episodes coming, and I'm on the brink of having 2 more after that. So
we talked about format changes. Like, are there format changes coming in the next 2?
So a couple things that we changed are in this first episode, all of the interviews were done outside, where people kind of got pulled away from their computers, and there was discussion that way. And then what we're doing now is we're doing like over the shoulder interruptions.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of like, hey, what are you working on? And then we have them start recording their screen and talk through like the piece of code they're working on right now.
Yeah.
Or things like that.
I mean, as long as it's not distracting to the people who are around.
Certainly is, but that's actually kind of fun because then what ends up happening is that when they're describing their code, somebody else catches on to what they're working on, and then they like have a quip. So there's a little more interaction, you know, a little more of that like fun back and forth.
Because I was trying to give you some drama moments in it. I was like, you know, oh, everybody else is freaking out. I'm okay. I mean, I knew that was gonna make it into the video because I'm like, that is pure drama. Right there. Like, yes, absolutely.
And so I think what we're also learning a little bit about like where I want it to go eventually, which is more of the full game show format. There's going to be stakes, right? Because one of the things about this show is intentionally there are no stakes.
I mean, there's no winners in the episode that I was in.
Right, and there aren't intended to be winners because the goal is for everybody to just build something and show it off and just kind of have like a dang, look what I built moment, right? Yeah. And so I like that for this show. But what I want to work toward in the future is more of the Great British Bake Off vibe where there is a prize. Yeah. But it's not like a cash prize. So you're not encouraged to be cutthroat about it. You're just, you know, you want to win, but like you're going to win a cake stand. It's not life-changing money or something like that. So you don't want to like undercut people. You're there to help your competitors. It's all friendly competition, but it is a competition.
Right. It's coopetition.
Coopetition. Yeah. I think that's a good way to describe it. And so I think trying to steer a little bit more into almost the competition with ourselves is where I'm trying to go with the Web Dev Challenge. So, you know, if I have a really ambitious thing and midway through I realize it's not going to work, there's some good drama in realizing like, oh no, like I thought I was going to get all this done. We're halfway through and I've gotten one of my 15 things finished. Yeah. There's Absolutely. No way I'm.
No, I think that's good. That's good drama for the show. You want everybody to come in and be like, oh, I'm going to get this done. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to crush it. You're never going to have seen anything like me. And then like halfway through be like, oh God, I can't do anything. And then somehow miraculously at the end have something to show. Right. But I mean, it is kind of interesting because I was thinking about this and it's like from a vendor point of view, right? You don't want to see people struggling with, like DataStax wouldn't want to see people struggling with Astra. They want to come out and say, look, and the guy said it in the show. He's like, look, these guys showed up and like, they knew nothing, and now like 4 hours later they've got something going, which is great. But I think for that other level of competition, I don't know if you can necessarily do like a vendor like that. Like that, it's more of a like a broader thing.
So the bigger vision for this is actually to get away from a single sponsor and start getting toward a raft of sponsors. And what I'm trying to work on right now is I'm actually trying to work out deals with like BenQ, the monitor company, just hit me up. Like, hey, how do you feel about sponsoring a show?
Right.
And like the BenQ monitors will be on screen the whole time.
And the awesome like raising desks and things like that, and the keyboards.
Exactly.
You can do a lot of that. And like nobody's gonna say, oh, I messed up my project, my keyboard sucks. My desk didn't go.
Exactly, right. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of good like product placement stuff that people will want to do, and that helps add to the budget. And then on top of that, if we do things like, I don't know, we work with a company like Netlify, for example, it's a deployment platform. It's not really the thing that helps you build. It's the thing that helps you get it online. Right. And I guess you can use some of their tools to like be part of your build, but ultimately for the vast majority of projects, you're going to build it in Astro or Svelte or whatever, and then you just deploy it to Netlify, and you're kind of not thinking about it, right? So they're a really ideal partner for the show because they get great product placement, but saying deploy to Netlify doesn't really materially change the way that you would build. You still build whatever you want. And so I'm kind of looking into partners like, my dream team would be get like GitHub, somebody like Figma, somebody like Netlify, somebody like Sentry, things that are sort of foundational tools for building for the web, but that aren't, you're going to use them kind of no matter what tech stack you want to use. So everybody can kind of get in there and use them, and then make them all optional. Like you have Figma if you want it, but you don't have to use it. If you don't use it, that's fine.
So I think, and I will say I have more in-laws and whatever who have watched this show versus anything that I've ever produced. And it's because there's a reality, they're getting to get some insights into how our stuff works. Right? But in a very accessible way. And I think that's a unique feature of this show. And I wonder if you also want to lean maybe into like the more, this is going to be controversial, but like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or things like that, where it's like, there's a broader aspect to just educating people about technology, normies about technology in general.
That's a great idea, actually.
Because this transits like nobody else's I've ever seen before.
Yeah, and that was
it's
sort of
it's a crossover format.
And I think about it the way that I think about something like the Great British Bake Off, the glass blowing show on Netflix, the bartender show,
the Forge and Fire is what I think of it
the ceramic, the Great Pottery Throwdown. Like you see these shows, and I don't do any of those things.
Right.
Like I'm a bit of a
but
home
you
bartender,
learn something in the process.
But when you watch it, it's fun to watch somebody be good at something.
Yeah.
And then when you watch them do it, you also pick up little tips that maybe I'll never go and throw a pot. But when Marissa's throwing ceramics, now I'm like, oh, you got to be careful when you pull those handles. She loves it. She
pull
really
those handles. Exactly. Yeah. Right? And it's like, you're getting a Dunning-Kruger effect. Anyway, whatever. But, and I think that's why we talked about, like, the animation stuff. It's really, like, if that, when Clark did the thing where he showed off, like, vector databases in this case.
Right.
I think, like, if you looked at Forge and Fire, like, they take some really pretty interesting, like, metallurgical topics.
Right.
And then, like, give you a 30-second thing that, like, you come away thinking, oh, wow, yeah, now I know more about annealing and whatever the heck it is. And you're like, that's what people want. They want to come away from it with that little tidbit of, like, ooh, pulling handles. Like, now I know how to do that.
Like, I think there's a reason that everybody got so excited about shows like How It's Made, right?
Yeah.
And it's because when you watch a show like that, you get to peel back the curtain of like something really complicated that you deal with all the time. Like how do they, injection mold all this plastic crap that we have all the time? I have no idea, but I use it all the time. So then you go and you see somebody build it and you go, oh, I have a fact now. It's something that I can talk to a friend about. It's not a useful fact, but it's like an interesting tidbit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the same thing is true about a lot of these shows where you don't necessarily, like, I don't necessarily want to become a Python developer, but having watched Lizzie build that app in Streamlit, I can now have at least a partially competent
I
conversation.
now understand like what it does.
Right.
Right.
And I understand that there is a path forward, and I understand some of the ways that that stuff works. And like, I might even recommend it to somebody based off the fact that how much Lizzie got done in like, what was it, 200 lines of code?
Yeah.
Right? Something ridiculous.
I mean, you don't have a lot of control over the UI, and it kind of looks whatever.
But like for a Python developer who wants to get something on the web, Streamlit looks pretty freaking dope.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's been something that's always been how I've operated on Learn with Jason, is I bring somebody on who knows something I don't, and you get a little glimpse into what it's like to be an expert in that tool.
Yeah.
And I think that this show takes that even a step further back, where you just kind of get to watch somebody build and you see what comes out. And like, if you want to, you can go look at the source code. It's in the description. If you want to, you can go try the app, but you don't have to. You can also just see what they did and hear them talk about it and go, oh, you know what? That's interesting, but it's not for me. But now I have a tidbit.
Yeah.
Right. And for somebody like, my family that doesn't work in tech, they're interested about what I do.
Yeah.
But not enough to like learn it.
Yeah.
But definitely enough to watch people do it.
But they're interested enough to annoy you about it. So here's what I'm thinking. No. But like, I think there's an actual value here for just regular Joe Schmo developer, because how many times have you gone to a party or whatever and people have been like, hey, can you write, I have this great idea for an app, blah, blah, blah. It's like absolutely cliche that people do this. And it happens. And you're like, oh, this is easy. You could write this in 5 minutes. And you're like, no, actually, like writing a production app takes a lot longer than that. And I think in a way, this show would prove that to people. They'd be like, oh, it's like, oh, hey, I'm watching a knife getting made. Now I understand why if I buy like a custom knife, it's going to cost me a couple $100 because this guy's spending all freaking day on this thing. You're essentially proving effort.
That's actually that's a point that I had not considered. That is a really good point.
Yeah, no, I think this thing's got legs.
I have watched a lot of videos online of, like, for example, again, not a ceramicist, very interested in it. I watched, there's this workshop.
You have to have hobbies, by the way.
I know. But what?
Hey, Marissa.
Very interested in it.
What?
No, come here, come on. Join in the conversation.
Oh,
Talking about like.
I don't know about that. I'm just.
What do you mean?
Shit talking from the corner.
I know you're shit talking from the corner. Now you gotta say it with your chest.
But we were just talking about how the show has like, essentially it's showing folks who don't know anything about technology what it actually takes to be in technology. And what I think, there's so many conversations people have with like project managers or their relatives or whatever, where they don't understand the basics of like how code is, how things work, right? And this show essentially, starts peeling back those layers, and it's nothing to be threatened by, because you're not going to turn into a glass blower.
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn into a mug maker.
You never know.
But but if you want to, that's fine, right?
But I was thinking about the fact that, like, I didn't know how hard it was to make a teapot until I accidentally got onto that TikTok of that like Chinese workshop where they make those perfect teapots.
Yeah.
And now I would spend a lot of money on a teapot.
Yeah, because
I don't even drink tea.
Right.
But the effort thing
And
you
you
were
should.
talking about is
proof of
very
effort.
true. Proof of effort. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in proof of effort, actually, too. Like, and understanding that the effort of the process is actually a really wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I'm speaking specifically about ceramics. I don't know about.
I think in general,
Or
like,
design.
seeing somebody be good at something is just generally pleasing.
It is.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know. I mean, I'm a woodworker. You're in clay. There's that moment where it's out of the kiln or whatever, and you're like, I made that.
Yes.
It's
It's like a very joyous surprise,
Yes.
even when it doesn't work. It's like still.
But
It's
you
like
learn
elation.
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know.
It's very
Exactly.
cool.
I'll get like done with building it or whatever, and I'll sand it down, and then I'll go off and eat dinner, and then I'll just find myself like going back to the garage and be like, oh, I made that, and I'll like run my hand over it and be like, yeah, that's awesome.
That's nice, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I pick up like vases I've made and I just like hold them.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
Yeah.
So I got that. Okay, I'm backing away into the corner. I was just hearing so much about ceramics. I was like, what is happening? I did it.
Okay.
And that thus concludes the Marissa cameo for today.
You're welcome to come back.
But yeah, no, I think you're right though that there's there's something just like generally pleasing about this general approach of being showing a glimpse into how things are done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because that also is something to think about, like in the edit as well, is like trying to show those moments of craft. And
I think that was one of the feedbacks that I got, was like they wanted more of the over the shoulder thing, where it was like, too much of it was hidden, and there's a lot about the emotion and all that, but essentially it could have been longer. Like people would have actually stuck around for longer.
I'm struggling with that, because I think like it is hard to get somebody to watch something that's 20 minutes long. And the fact that we did is incredible. And I am taking a lot of heart from that. The idea of expanding it out to 35 minutes though, like terrifies me. I think what would be interesting though is
you got to sustain that drama. That is the only way.
Right.
You got to get people in the beginning where it's like, where you see a little bit of that cockiness, then you see a little bit of that exploding their faces, then you see a little bit of that, and it doesn't even have to be everybody. I mean, not everybody has to like blow up, but at least one person, you have to show that moment of like, oh my God,
right. Yeah, the cake on the floor,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think Chance had like, you got some of the best reactions out of Chance. Like, I don't know what the heck.
Chance is also great because he's so deadpan. So the fact that he was worried, like if you don't know Chance, you might have been like, he's mildly concerned. If you know Chance, you were like, he was freaking out.
Yes. Yeah. That was gutsy though, walking into a show with like not knowing what this was.
Yeah,
like, wow,
I think that's sort of the game, right? Well, I mean that was like that's what I did too, and
that's gutsy.
But I think to me that's sort of that's the best part of the game, is like how quickly can you like componentize a concept, and especially with something like this AI stuff where we're just inventing terms for the sake of it, where it's like, oh yes, your vector database where you can store your embeddings so that you can do prompt engineering so that you can, and I was like, wait, so hold on, we're getting a representation of the concept in a database, so that we can search for it.
I know we're getting in the world of like sailing, which is so annoying because it's like, wait a second, port and starboard. Wait, you mean left and right? Like bow, keel? You mean the front and like the back? Like why do we need new terms for all this? But like totally. Yeah, actually, the whole embedding thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to demystify that on my.
So, Lori, hello, Lori.
Hey, Lori.
A challenge in the middle to trip people up, I think, is such a good idea. So this is what I want to do.
Needs a longer format,
and that's why I want to get to the
although it's
full
really
game
45
show.
Minutes.
Yeah, I think the full game show would be probably a 40 to 45 minute format.
Yeah,
but it would have the like acts in it. You know, when you watch something like Top Chef or the Bake Off, they have 2 to 3 challenges per episode, and then they'll have something like a late game twist.
Somehow I'm uncomfortable with the term game show. It just reminds me of like the Gong Show or something like that. Like maybe it's more like a competition show.
It's reality competitions,
yeah, okay.
I think.
That's the official, way I was calling it.
Like if I was going to pitch it somewhere, I'd call it a reality competition show.
Right.
But I think
craft.
It is, right?
And so game.
One of the things that I'd love to do though is have you ever seen the show Nailed It?
No.
So Nailed It is
There's too many freaking shows.
Yeah. So Nailed It is on Netflix, and it is a comedy baking competition. So they take people who are terrible bakers and then have them try to recreate really complex stuff, like sculptural cakes or like really carefully hand painted cupcakes. And they give these people an hour and a half and like do not teach them how to bake. So they're just atrocious, right? And that's the whole point of the show, is you want to be terrible. But then they also, to whoever does the worst, they give them like a power up, which is a button they can press, at which point the other competitors get something that trips them up. Like you can hit the button, and then the guest celebrity on the show will go over and just start stealing things from the other bakers, or will start like monologuing at them in French or something like that, right?
Nice.
And so they make it into this sort of like you get almost like attacks against your competitors, which I think is the funniest thing. Like I think it would be so funny on this show if there was a way to like get an attack that you could use to, for example, for the next 5 minutes, your keyboard switches to Colmac. Right?
Yeah.
And like you get a labeled keyboard, they just kind of unplug it and plug in a new one. So you can pen peck your way through, but like you don't know how to type anymore. Now you have to like learn how to type again in order to do this thing. And I think that would be such a fun way to do it. Or yeah, like last minute scope creep, like the client has arrived, they changed their mind, now you got to add this. Oh yeah. And you got 25 minutes before deadline.
You could have like a deck of cards that would have like these, these little things that you can throw out, like the bad keyboard or the no longer getting a mouse or whatever it is.
Just the chaos deck. Like,
the chaos.
Everybody draw a card.
Everybody draw a card, and then like the initial interview is like, what are you gonna do? But also, what's your card, or something like that. Or I don't know, maybe you hide the card or whatever. But like then at a certain point, you're like, yeah, this is the time, and I'm like, I'm gonna mess with that guy.
Yeah. Everybody draws one attack card from the deck and they can play it
at any time.
At any time.
Yeah.
And some of them are really good.
Yeah.
Like you could play it on your own card and you get like a pair programmer to help you,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Or you could get one that's an attack and then you could that would actually be really fun. I like that.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
You definitely have to have some unique element, right? Yeah, but it's got to get that drama, and you got to get those moments.
I've been kicking around an idea for another game show, like a completely unrelated thing that, because I've wanted to make Hot Ones since I saw Hot Ones.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with the format?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Although they've got multiple formats now. They've got like Hot Ones versus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So actually, we only watch the regular Hot Ones for whatever reason.
So I've only been watching the regular Hot Ones. I wasn't familiar with the others. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is figure out how to make that kind of a challenge into a coding thing.
Yeah.
And so I had a game show concept with it where you would have two doors on a desk in front of you, and you would get a challenge, and that challenge would be some random front end challenge. Like it would be, center this div,
style this thing,
or
exactly.
Or now that the databases are becoming part of the front end, write a SQL query to join these two tables, right? And like each one of us is going to be really good or really bad at some of those things.
Yeah.
Right. And so, a back of the front end engineer is going to nail the, do some like node microservice stuff, do your SQL queries, but then they're going to get asked to like put these into a flex box. You don't get to look at the internet, and they're going to panic and fail. Right. And if you get it right, the left door turns green, opens up, and you get like a little treat, a little chocolate or something.
Yeah.
If you get it wrong, the red door lights up and opens up, and you have to eat a hot wing that gets increasingly spicier with each mistake that you make.
Yeah.
And the challenges, I think, would be on sort of like a random difficulty roll. So you would choose a topic and then get a random difficulty roll on like what the thing was. So maybe it's just like select all the entries from this table, or maybe it's like you have to write a join of 3 things, and you have to make sure that you organize all of it into a single JSON array.
Yeah.
That is correct. You don't get to use the internet.
Okay.
Right. So
I was just gonna throw in like, we've got ChatGPT, right, as a vehicle. That could also be like, you get 3 uses of ChatGPT.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
But every time you use ChatGPT, the interface that you use to access it also gives you a ChatGPT generated penalty.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really like there's some really fun ways I think to like just make it, use the computers as part of the chaos. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Add more of a playful sort of oppositional, but not oppositional in the like classic reality sense of like actually undercutting people, but in the like you would mess with your friends, kind of like almost like a prank.
Yeah.
Right? And I think if we can capture that spirit of like, I'm messing with you, but not in a way that's going to ruin your day, just in a way that's going to like make us all laugh.
Yeah.
That to me is like that's the perfect execution of these shows.
Yeah, there's definitely a vibe.
Yes.
That is unique to our profession, I guess. That that would be cool to capture.
Yeah.
Kind of like, because I mentioned like it would be good to see teams, right? Because I don't want to necessarily promote the whole 10x dev kind of thing. I think that's toxic.
I think in the final form, my big vision is to make it a designer dev pair.
Yeah,
like more of like.
But how do you engage the designer? Basically, it's like in the beginning, how do you engage the dev? Because they're done.
But I think this is actually the really interesting part, because if you're in a time challenge, you have to plan together and then you have to work in parallel, or you're not going to finish.
Yeah,
so how do you collaborate? And then probably it would be more of like a front of the front end, like a design engineer, somebody who will be able to design something and then do HTML, CSS.
Yeah.
And then somebody who's more of like a back of the front end, like a do functionality APIs, databases and stuff, and then can like reach into the React components, but like maybe isn't super comfortable with styling.
Yeah.
And then you have them sort of meet in the middle,
yeah.
and together they should be a pretty high functioning team.
Yeah.
And then how do they collaborate? How do they talk about how things are going to work? How do they make sure that what the back end engineer is building is actually going to be compatible with what the front end engineer is building? And that when they get down the road, they're not going, oh my God, we have to refactor all of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would be, I would love to see that. I would love to see that in a, like, because what I really wanted to show is have the engaging content to watch folks at the whiteboard having a really fun time. Hey, let's try this. The UI is gonna look like that. Because those are the most fun times for me as a developer.
Yeah.
Is like working with my product manager or working with my designer to like just brainstorm and have some fun, just like thinking out loud. Those are the fun moments. And yeah, I want to capture that. And be like, oh, look, it's not just bits and bytes. It's not just, here are your elite code challenges and garbage and whatever. It's these moments of fun, creativity, and design. That's why I'm in it. That's why I've always been in it.
Yeah, I mean the meeting that's hard to describe. Like when people say they hate meetings, I always am sad because the best meetings, like there are these moments that you have where you get the team together and you have a hard problem and you point everybody at it and they get firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And you go from like, why are we losing money to at the end we're like, we have 95 ideas that we're sure will work.
Yeah.
And then of course you get to the sad part where you have to like start editing and choose one to work on, which is where it usually gets bad. But
I know that
but that
ideation
initial,
part is amazing.
Oh my God, that is like the most fun room to be in.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing like it. And I want to show that to people.
Yes.
Because there's this notion of this dryness to what we do.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Right.
Well, ideally not real. I mean, I think for a lot of folks out there is kind of this kind of like Jira humping kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think there's definitely I think a certain school of thought around taking code and making it something that happens after everything else is done. Right? Where you sort of get a plan and they're like, all right, now make it work.
Yeah.
Right. The same disrespect that they'll give to designers where they say, we built it, now make it pretty. Right. Like that,
right.
That sort
Except
of
the
thing,
inverse, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So depending on who's at the top of the chain and how well they collaborate, you can get into these really terrible situations. But ultimately, you kind of want that whole group to be together.
Sure.
In a perfect world, you'd be able to. I don't know how the hell I would fund this, but like get an actual like functional product team together. Get the product person, get the designer, get the developer, maybe get a couple developers, and like take a more complicated problem.
Yeah.
Because you can spread out and have the product person thinking about how are we like what does the copy look like for this? How are we going to actually have this fit the needs of the people who are using it?
Yeah.
Have the designer taking that input while making something that's beautiful and functional and accessible. Have the developers working on different one's working on like UI interactivity, one of them's working on like backend services and APIs. Get all of that working together.
Yeah.
In a short, like maybe 8 hours instead of 4.
Yeah.
Like holy crap, that would be
really
so cool to see. Just to see what a high functioning team can do.
Yeah.
Right.
And after 8 hours, I mean, you're actually getting to the verge of having something. If the team is high performance enough, like you could actually like POC that and like
legitimately MVP it
in front of VC. Yeah.
This is, I don't know, this feels...
Well, that would be interesting. Like, partner with a VC and like the end reward
it's our version of Shark Tank.
Yeah. You actually get to pitch this, Although, I imagine the VC would probably want to see all of it, even not necessarily the winner, because the winner is not necessarily the one they might,
Well, I think
that's the one I might want to go with.
What would be really interesting too is that one's kind of a fun idea because it points at this idea of it's not just the end result that gets you the job. Like, because if you've got a team where one of the people is a complete jerk who just ignores their 3 teammates and does whatever they want and they build something incredible by themselves, but everybody's mad at them, they're probably not going to get that investment. They're probably not going to get that job because everybody sees how they treated everybody. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas a team that maybe didn't get as far as they wanted to, but they were really on top of things and they were really working well together. They had great ideas and like miscalculated on one thing that required a refactor.
Yeah.
They might all get the job because we saw how well they did, even though they needed to like refactor this one bad assumption.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that sort of thing too is really interesting because it it starts to dismantle that idea of the 10x developer.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one
Because
of
there's
the
really
most,
a 10x team.
Exactly.
People were so pissed off when I tweeted about that a long time ago. I'm like, 10x devs are only good because there's a 10x team around them and there's not people blocking them. But like MRV Dog over here, I'm just looking at your comments and it's like, I'd love to join that with my designer, right? I have a product manager that I would love to do this with. Because, it's like as you roll through the industry, you find these people who are like, you're just like, they're answering your sentences, you're answering their sentences, you're like, yeah, this is great, and like they're adding their unique like skill set of being able to really work through like the analytics and the numbers and how the customer perception works and all that sort of stuff. You're working through on the back end to like try and figure out like how it's all gonna fit together.
Right.
Like there's that really cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
People you flow well with. Precisely. Yes.
And I think,
and that's the thing. Like you get in a company, like the best managers understand that they're building teams and like it doesn't matter, like a good team, it doesn't matter what you give them, they're just gonna rock it because they're just a good team and they're just having fun with each other.
Right. Yes, 100%. Like I think the magic of a lot of this stuff is this general belief that like what makes people effective is an environment that promotes effectiveness.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really interesting is that you can take somebody who was maybe really low performing on another team and you bring them in and you give them space and you like support them.
Yeah.
And suddenly they believe in themselves. They trust themselves enough to try something because they know they're not going to get yelled at if they make a mistake or they're not going to get undercut for like going against the manager or something. And they do stuff that you could never imagine. Yeah. They just like completely blow your mind. And I've thought about this a lot ever since the early days when I first joined Netlify under Sarah Drasner. It was that kind of team. Like Sarah was very good as a manager of kind of like giving us this space to operate. And she, she did a lot of like in meetings when other leadership would say, why are you doing it that? Do this instead. She would say, let them cook. Like she would just do a lot of blocking for us so that we could try stuff. And we got as a team to sort of bounce ideas off of each other, try things. And we made stuff that, there's a reason that people still point to that team as like, that was like the golden era of DevRel.
Yeah.
And it's because you got a team with good ideas that got space and had trust.
Yeah.
And I guarantee that's the same thing that happened with Stripe's design team and why they're considered one of that era of Stripe is one of the best designer teams ever. Why, like Figma got to work for 4 years, like 2012 to 2016, they worked on Figma before they released it.
Yeah.
Like that's a team that got space. They got to work on something, right? And look what happened, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the more you look at these teams that really went well, what you get is you get either one person who got to work in isolation with no restraints, like I got a huge investment from dad. And I got to work on whatever I wanted until it was right, which is fine, right? It's the same general concept, a little less inspiring.
Those can be myopic, and you definitely see though, like, they're the only person that uses it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a classic thing.
But then the other one that you see is you get these rare moments where a company has a restructure, and in the crack of that restructure, there's this brief and glorious moment where somebody can actually create space for creativity.
Yeah.
And they do something magical. Yeah. And everybody goes, what's going on at that company? What's the secret sauce? And the company then tries to understand it, and then they structure it, and then it's gone.
Right.
And,
or they do that awful thing where they're like, oh, these 5 people are super high performing. And we can treat it like yogurt. We can go and take them out in isolation and drop them into other teams, and it'll be like some sort of thing where they'll just like automatically inject their awesomeness into other teams, like some sort of culture. And it's like that's not how people work.
I've never thought of this metaphor before, but I think I'm going to use it forever now. But
like yogurt
treating
starter.
us like yogurt,
like sourdough starter.
But that's actually a really clever.
That's exactly what it is. You're basically saying like, this person is awesome. We're going to take them over here in this valley of horribleness, and they'll just somehow it'll just pop out. It'll just like they'll fix all the awfulness,
and that doesn't work.
Never works.
It can work, and I've seen in a couple places like I've noticed that if you put somebody in who is senior enough and they have enough clout that they can sort of like change the leadership dynamics, then you get interesting results. But it's so rare that the people who get moved have the clout to be able to say like, no manager, no SVP, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this and get listened to, right? So usually what happens is you take somebody and they try to bring a healthy team dynamic, and then they get crushed under, well, but we've always done it that way.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're fighting against culture, and the folks that are in the underperforming team, like they want, in a way, to be on that team. It was so bad they would have left, right, or something, right? They would have changed it. But like teams have a culture for a reason, and like when you go in and you fight the culture, man, like it works a little bit, but then you just get beaten down.
Yeah, I think the major challenge that I've noticed is that a lot of what ends up happening, in these like low performing teams is it sort of becomes like a turtling up, right? Where you're on this team and things are bad, and you don't know if it would be better, but you're so tired that you're like, you know what? I'm gonna choose the devil I know.
Yeah.
Like I figured out how to make this work where I'm only paid twice a week. And I figured out how to only work 50 hours a week. And I know where all the broken bits of this code are, so I can usually put out the fire. So I'm just gonna keep my head down. I'm just gonna stay here. I found this at IBM a lot, actually, where we went on tour trying to like introduce some new code that had fixed a bunch of like manual security audits and just painful stuff that was happening inside the code base. I worked with my team to build out kind of a node microservice that encapsulated that stuff, so that we'd built a node module on the IBM private registry that was our security compliance. So the security team could work on that module, and then we just made sure everybody updated, as opposed to what they were doing before, which was this sort of like internal tour of going from team to team and manually upgrading each of their software sets.
Yeah.
Right, and this was like that was one of many teams that just had to kind of go in a circle and fix everybody's code continually. And so I introduced this new thing, and I went on tour, and I was like, "Hey, we've got this thing. It's going to make your life easier." And everybody was like, "No, we don't want it."
Yeah, I know.
And what I realized, I had a really good conversation with one of the SVPs there. He was like, "Listen, people here don't want new, they don't want exciting, and they don't want fun. They want less work. They want boring."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I changed the way that I started talking about it, where what he specifically said was like, draw the box smaller. And he showed me this diagram where he was like, here's their service, and then you come in and you say, here's my service, and I want you to use my service with your service. And they go, look, that's twice as big.
Yeah.
Right. So instead, draw their service, take a big chunk of it, and say, this is all stuff that everybody has to do.
Yeah.
It's duplicated work. Here's my tiny little service. All of this goes away. Your service gets smaller, and all you have to do is deal with this little service. And now I will manage all of this for you.
Yeah.
And as soon as I changed that visual, people were like, oh yeah, I do get paged about security a lot.
Yeah.
It would be nice if I didn't have to do that. And I was like, I will take your pager duty. You just have to like trust me with this. And we ripped that code out of a whole bunch of the services in the team. But every single one of them was coming from like a protection and fear-based. Like nobody was excited to learn, right? Like we'd beaten them down with janky software and like really tight deadlines to the point where they were all just like shield over their head, like, come on, man, just like I just got to get through
This is the last thing I want to deal with. Yeah. But that's the cool thing about that story is that it actually works for both your motivated developers and your unmotivated developers, because the unmotivated ones are like, okay, whatever, I guess this doesn't seem as bad as it possibly could, whatever. Whereas your motivated developers are like, I don't care about the security stuff at all. All I want to do is like write cool stuff for customers, and the security stuff is just getting in the way. So if you're going to take part of that off my plate, fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Well, and it's almost that sort of like you get trained by leadership how things are going to go, and if leadership has continually promised, just fix this one thing and everything will be fine, and then it's not, right? And like everybody at IBM has, way before they met me, had somebody, and at the time I was like 27, right? So some young hotshot coming through saying, I fixed everything, just switch to my software. That's the reason that the IBM code base sucks. It's a bunch of clowns like me who came in and introduced something new and then moved on and didn't stay to maintain it, right? And like I did exactly that. I hope I left good enough docs and good enough training with my team that they all feel good about it. And I did notice recently they're still maintaining the software that I built, because I'm for some reason I'm still on the repos. But
oh wow, that's weird.
Yeah, like security only goes so far.
There's not a lot of security there. But yeah, I remember I was working at Walmart Labs, and I was doing this like design system tooling, like components, all that. We were basically trying to get React into the ecosystem. And I went into this meeting with this guy who was like super jaded, but he'd been there forever, and he was like, and he's like pulling me aside, he's, dude, 7 months from now, you're gonna be gone, and why would I depend on this? And the really sad thing was 7 months later,
he was right.
Yeah, I was gone.
It's a really valid survival technique, I think, in a company to be resistant of somebody who's new.
Yeah.
Because I think that we all go in and we look at a system and we go, the system's not very good. I could build a better system.
Yeah.
And so we start working on our own improvements. And we don't have the cultural context. We haven't seen that, things that I didn't know about when I started working on my solution, for example, is that there are actually more people employed to maintain forks of IBM Cloud than the people who work on the core product. Because their enterprise sales motion is, if the customer needs something, they just fork it, right? And then they hire enough engineers because those are $500 million a year contracts.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, whatever, we can hire 20 engineers to maintain this.
Wow.
And they're just cool with that, right?
Yeah.
So for someone like me, who has
rugged.
never considered that, because those are numbers that don't compute in my brain, I see them doing something silly in the core product, and I'm like, well, let's fix that. And they're like, the level of effort to port that to all of the enterprise forks, it's not worth it. And so then you get into this whole new layer of like complications in politics that I didn't even know could exist.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that I think what it does show, though, is that I think my manager, Robin Cannon, was my manager there. He's since gone on to J.P. Morgan Chase. He runs their design system team there, and he was able to create this really healthy front end culture where we had space, we had clear deliverables, and basically the instruction we got was, if you can hit your deliverables, the rest of your time is yours.
That's nice.
And if you want to try something new, feel free, right? Because they had Agile, we had a Scrum Master and all those things to tell us like what was planned, what was due. Let's see. All right, we got questions. What's up, y'all?
Okay. I'm working at an old company, and the dev's working soul sucking. I'm all for soul sucking, and innovation is impossible. Should I commit to going independent? Wow, that's interesting.
Okay, going independent.
Wow.
Okay, so you and I both recently have gone independent.
Yeah.
How has your day-to-day changed?
It's funny. I was actually gonna talk a little bit about this. From a development perspective, I find it very lonely. Just gonna be real with you. I know that we all would say, oh man, I hated those daily stand-ups and stuff, but you'd at least talk to people who were doing kind of things like that, kind of daily. And there was a certain level of that was just nice. It was like a kind of built-in community. I guess this is kind of a little bit about what I'm trying to do over the next couple of months or so, is get into a more of do more live streaming, get out, hang with my buds more, that sort of stuff. But because there's that kind of loneliness of you're just kind of on your own. And that's tough. I get it. It's cool. The other part of it, of course, is the uncertainty of money and all that, which was certainly a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about it a lot because I went independent, and for me, I left a leadership role, and so I didn't get to code a lot.
Yeah.
So I actually feel like I code more now, which is great, and I have a little more time to do collaborative stuff. So I get more of that coder to coder connection, which is great. But what I'm missing is I don't get time to work. Probably 60+% of my time now is sales.
Yeah.
Because I have to land clients. I have to convince somebody to pay me for something. I'm doing invoices, I'm doing email follow-ups, I'm writing to-do lists. This notebook, all of these pages, every single one of these pages is a to-do list that I've had to write.
Whoa.
These are my to-do lists, right?
Dude.
They're aggressive.
You are so much more organized than I am. Boy, I tell you what.
But yeah, so I build out my to-do list, and I keep my leads, and I keep my clients and all those things so that I can stay.
Build video player app. That's not done.
It is not
done.
Still not done.
Yeah. It's not gonna be done for
That's
a while.
actually what I was going to work on today.
Oh, sorry. Welcome
the
to
Astro
it.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I've
Here
been
I
putting,
am. Messing up your day. But this is good though.
Well, I treasure this kind of stuff. I think the ability to just have somebody be in town, drop by, hang out, I think is, I miss that, man. I remember when I was a kid, when I was in high school, you didn't like make calendar plans with your friends. You just kind of went to their house and knocked on the door. You're like, hey, hey, is Nate around? And then you'd like walk to the, in my case, we'd walk in a triangle between Nate's house, my house, and City Beach. And we'd be bored. So we'd just kind of go in a circle and decide where we were going to hang out for the next 45 minutes before we went on a walk again.
Right. And I remember I would get home from school or whatever, and I would smell liver and salt liver, and and you'd smell it in the air, like, and what's for dinner tonight? Liver. And I'd be like calling my friends, hey, what do you got? And like I would be out of there. Like it was the worst thing ever. So but no, it's certainly that. There's the financial uncertainty. It's really tough because on one hand, it's like I know I've been at jobs where like literally it was maybe 10 hours of work a week, and it was super easy, the kind of thing I could do in my sleep. But it felt really soul-sucking. It's exactly. I use the term soul-sucking, right? And it was like, I know I could be doing so much cooler stuff and all that sort of thing. And then you get on your own and you're like, oh, wow, there's all this extra stuff that I have to do that's not doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And everything. Yeah. And so but on the other hand, it's very freeing. So there's a lot of pros and cons.
Huge trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Like I get to choose the work that I do. I very rarely have to do something that I don't want to do, but I also have to work my ass off to sell those projects.
Yeah.
Because again, the stuff that I want to do is exorbitantly expensive.
And there's nobody like you. There's nobody doing what you do. Like you're doing, like the content that I produce is expensive, but it's expensive because it's expensive in my own time, right? I'll take 10, 20, 30 hours to develop one video, right?
Right.
In my own, so whatever, that's an expense. But the stuff that you do is so next level, and it's like the risk involved in that is just amazing to me. And I super props, man, for like doing that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I am like, I'm also realizing that, I need to do something that's a little more sustainable. So like one of the things that I'm trying to work on is I'm building this is embarrassing because I announced this like 2 years ago, but I'm going to do an Astro course.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yes.
And so I've been building enough Astro stuff. Like everything I build now is in Astro, and I'm pushing toward. I'm going to try to announce the first workshops for the course here in the next, probably like within this month. Like,
what does that mean?
So
what is a workshop?
So the way that I'm working with Joel Hooks. You've worked with Joel Hooks.
We're working together on pronextjs.dev.
That's right. Which you should all go. Let's drop
go
a
to
link.
pronextjs.dev right now. Sign up on the newsletter.
Nextjs.dev. Look at that. It's even in my history.
Oh, nice.
Let's get this up there.
What's great?
Where is it? Here.
There you go.
All right. So this is pronextjs.dev. This is built by Jack. It's a team up with our good friend Joel
Hooks.
And Joel is responsible for things like Epic Web, Epic React.
Yeah.
What else? He's done Total TypeScript.
Yeah.
Like he's sort of the man behind the curtain for a lot of folks who are doing
the really pro level courses.
And so I set up a project with Joel.
Ooh, I love this.
Isn't this great? Like,
Yeah.
Part of the reason that I have to finish this because I have to be able to use this branding. It's so
I know,
good.
It's gorgeous.
But so
it's
this
very
is
70s.
Michelle and Wojciech Holik.
Yeah.
Did the design and like the actual like Michelle did the illustration, Wojciech did the coding.
Yeah.
And then this is my like Learn Astro course.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put this together and we're gonna make it happen. And right now, if you get on this newsletter, nothing will happen. But soon, within this month, I swear it, Fada, you've been asking me for this for a year. It's actually happening now because I've realized that. So one of the best and worst.
All you
things
want to do is code. That's all I want to do. Actually,
but I think one of the best and worst things about Joel Hooks, and you might be able to sympathize with this. He does not believe in deadlines.
No.
Like if you're working with Joel, he's like, look, man, you're an adult. I'm not going to give you a deadline. You can choose whether or not this is important to you. And what I've realized is that I don't function without deadlines.
I know.
So I'm going to set my own deadlines by announcing workshops.
Yes.
And each workshop is going to be a big portion of like the coursework.
Okay.
And I'm going to use the workshops as a way to validate the content, which is that's usually part of Joel's process.
And I see. Today was Astro Plus Clerks, and you get an Astro hat on. I'm messing this up for you.
No, it's good. That's actually not what I was doing today.
Okay, here's what. Okay, so guys, he's got this rainbow branding. What I think he should do is like I've got my blue shirt branding. Like every time it's always blue collar coder, right? So blue shirts. He should have rainbow suspenders on. Every time he shoots these videos, he should do rainbow suspenders.
Rainbow suspenders
to match with the rainbow branding on the site. That's what I think. Go full 70s. Go like full Mork and Mindy, full 70s. Just do it. Do it.
So the other thing that I got to figure out too is how I'm going to do, because one of the major things is like you're doing Pro Next.js, right?
Yes.
And a major factor in whether or not these. Oh, nice. When's it like officially?
Well, we're just going through post processing right now.
Hell yeah. So that's amazing.
I know.
So.
Yeah, he was like, when I was talking to him up in Cascadia, he's like, yes, but he was talking about the no pressure thing that he's got and that kind of intimidating style that he's got. And I'm like, yes, I felt that. I felt the pressure from you that you never actually had. Like every day I would wake up like, I'm failing Joel today. And he's like, I swear, do you not feel this?
No, it's true.
This is real. I'm cooking now, but I could be working on the Astro course. I am failing Joel as I cook.
Hold on, I got to pull up. For those of you who don't know, let me find a picture of Joel. Because I have, let's see.
He doesn't look like an intimidating guy. But
I disagree. Like, Joel is a very intimidating man.
That's an intimidating
let me put this up on the
You're both
screen.
kind of doing the intimidating vibe.
All right, so this is Joel Hooks.
I don't have tats, but look at those tats.
Look at this man.
Good Lord.
So Joel and I, we did a party where we wanted to make, we were going to dress like the bear. So this is why we're in bear cosplay.
Season 3 is on the way.
I know, it's out, and I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, well, it's only a couple first episodes. But okay.
But so this is Joel, and so Joel very lovingly will not set a deadline, but then he looks at you like this, and you're like, oh man, he's pissed.
Yeah, right.
And he's not. He's actually not. He's not pissed. Joel is like the nicest guy ever. But it is intimidating.
Yes, exactly. I already feel like I'm disappointing him. And I don't even work for the guy. Oh, stop, Mike. Dude.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, the bear is so good. But it's not all of it, though. It's like
they dropped the whole thing. Binge. They did a binge season.
Dude.
I know.
Okay. I got to get through Queen Charlotte and then, yeah. Anyway. Okay, sorry.
But yeah. I mean, the bear definitely does bring back the stress. It's for those of us who worked in kitchens. It's like I never worked in a high end kitchen. I've worked in like a regular back of house, and it's got some stressful moments for sure.
Yeah, I mean, every job has stressful moments. Like I would maybe not, but I mean, I've definitely like had that moment of like you push to prod. And things just collapse, and you're like, "Oh, f!" How fast can we turn this thing around?
Right. Yeah. But so all that to say, I think I think I'm learning. What I'm realizing is that for me, I have a need for deadlines.
Yeah.
And so for me to get anything done, I have to publicly commit to something.
Yeah. And
the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to set some workshops, and then people are going to buy slots in those workshops, and I have to make the content for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we'll probably, if you've got something you want to learn specifically about Astro, let me know, because I'm going to do the basics. We're going to do like building a marketing site that has no JavaScript, like just kind of the core use case of like why Astro is dope.
Yeah.
And then move into things like server-side rendering. We're going to get into things like middleware. I'll get a little AI in there. All right.
People want to learn that. I mean, I think there's a lot to be done there.
I think there's definitely some interesting stuff there. I'm going to get into authentication, get into setting up API routes, having database access, using AstroDB itself, using
their CMS system, which is
using
awesome.
I haven't actually played with that one yet. That's on my list. It's supposed to be really cool.
Yeah, no, built-in content collections, and the stuff that if you haven't subscribed to Ben Holmes, do it.
Yeah,
the dude is one freaking brilliant. Like I've hung with him in person. He's just a super nice guy, right, in general. but he is super bright, and he'll plow through things like RSCs, and he's got like actions going on now. I mean, Astro's, yeah,
it's legit.
Good.
Like,
it's good.
People are talking about, some people, the loud people, are talking about sort of the demise of React, is where we're seeing like, not the demise, but maybe that React has hit its pinnacle and it's now starting to move into legacy land, where it's for a specific use case. Like, I think somebody put it really well that Next.js is now an e-commerce framework, and it's very good as an e-commerce framework, but it's not the sort of like use it for everything framework that it was. And
I'd extend that to a little bit to highly dynamic apps. But all these frameworks, they have niches, like the way they're really good. And I do think that React is a victim of its own success.
Yes.
In that it's so ubiquitous, and so many people use it that like absolutely it's fashionable to be disgruntled with it. But each one of these frameworks has warts. Like Vue, I've used Vue in production. It's got warts.
Right.
I've used Svelte in production. It's got warts. I've used Solid. I haven't put Solid in production, but it's got these little itty bitty issues that if it were scaled up to 100, 10,000 times the usage, people would be like, "Oh man, like I hate that thing about Solid." Nobody ever has anything bad to say about Solid, because like.
Well, it's still new enough, right?
It's very new. Well, it's not really very new, but it really doesn't have that pickup that React has had. And you don't have a lot of like newbie developers getting into Solid, right? Newbie developers get into React, and they look at it and go, "Wait a second, hold on, this function gets called multiple times.
Right,
I don't understand. Like, what's a hook? What do these things mean?"
I think so, and I think the major challenge that I've noticed is that for any technology, it sort of goes through. You can look at something like jQuery, and everybody will only point out the things they hate about it.
Yeah,
and it's because it became so ubiquitous that it is fully explored.
Yes,
like it's under clinical, like surgical light. We can see every single facet of it. It has nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
I think React has crossed into that room where it's now under full clinical examination.
Yeah.
And things like Solid or Svelte that are there, but a lot of people have only used them in like light capacity. Like they use it for a side project, but they don't get to ship it at work.
Right.
So they've only seen it for like their use case, which is typically a kind of a happy path for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's more of a dim light, right? And it's got that like portrait studio lighting where it looks real good, right? And so as the brightness turns up, we start to see the problems.
Yes.
But I think for right now, and it's just software in general, right?
Yeah.
Like we use frameworks for a reason. But I also think one of the things I've noticed about React is that I feel like React actually got to the point that jQuery was at, where it proved a point so thoroughly that what I want to see is I actually want to see things like the component model get adopted into the platform, the way that we adopted Query Selector, the way that we adopted stuff like that, so that then React
Isn't that web components though?
Well, we need an API for web components that people like, and I think, that
looks like a lot like React.
But I think it might be React, it could be the Svelte way. I mean, I think the single file component thing is really fascinating from a, like, can we do that in the web platform? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Can we do a script type server and have like a native, like a browser native kind of? Probably not, right? But maybe there's an interesting way that we can learn from these different platforms and bring something into the platform so that we don't need Vite anymore.
Yeah.
Like maybe Vite becomes a browser feature. Who knows, right? There are a lot of ways that we could make this interesting. But ultimately, the component-based model, I think, is something like, can we get a flavor of JSX that everybody agrees on into the browser? And can we get a flavor of like components exported from modules that everybody agrees on that we can get into the browser? And if we can,
well, that's ESM, but yeah.
Well, ESM with like an automatic JSX interpretation. If you
ESM with JSX, got it.
So kind of this idea that like we can build a component and export we build an ES module, we export a component, we import that into whatever page, and then we just drop it in like we would a web component. And it just works, and we get the features that we wanted, right?
Yeah.
That then sort of negates the need for React, because the vast majority of what people were doing with it, and still, if you look at the polls that I'm seeing from like Tanner Lindsley and some of the stuff that we see, and obviously everybody's working with their own biased crowd, But it kind of seems like the vast majority of React apps are still create React app, Vite,
Spa.
vanilla Spa.
Yeah.
So a Spa built with web platform components that felt like React to use is sort of the majority use case, right?
Yeah.
And then things like Next can be specialty tools for when you need something more.
Have you played with Lit?
I played with Lit a little bit. I need to play more because it's got.
I feel like Lit is what we're talking about, but neither of us has.
The major problem that I have with all of those is they feel similar to Angular in that there's like 4 steps to do everything. And I think one of the things that was really magical about the React flow of components is that you've got, here's a file, I wrote some JSX, and then over here I import my component and then I use it on the page.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to I didn't have to define component, didn't have to give it a namespace, didn't have to like do all this stuff. I just got to write it and use it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the piece that's missing from the platform standard is like the platform keeps saying like, well, no, you have to write all of that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no. That's the reason that we
have a platform.
Yeah, that like I want you to just understand how components work.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to let me opt into something more complicated, great. Right. We can still create element syntax in React if we want.
Yeah.
But why would we?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's sort of my why was I talking about this?
I don't know, and I'm always amazed by the fact that we've gone all the way from like how to structure a game show, all the way to like the internals of like component models in whatever on the web. Let's do a couple more. Nobody's being handed
shitty old solid code. That's very true. Like I also that's
nobody's being handed solid code.
This is the
let's get real.
That's anybody who's using solid right now wrote the code they're writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's no hand-me-down solid projects yet.
Yeah.
But I think that was sort of like that's the other maturity curve that's really interesting is when something goes from being I wrote this to I inherited this. That's when the sentiment drops.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big thing for Next is that a lot of people got Next code that they didn't write.
Right.
And say what you will about Angular. Every Angular project looks the same. If you've worked on Angular, you can work in any Angular project, and you're pretty. Like Rails is the same way. Like these frameworks that are really verbose, .NET.
Yeah.
If you get into a project and you learn how that thing works, every single project runs the same because it has to.
That's a huge win. And I think people like they pissy about Angular, but at the same time, like from a business standpoint, it actually makes a whole lot of sense.
I think that's why it's still such an enterprise tool, right? Yeah. Like everybody likes it in the enterprise because it makes portability.
And in Europe.
Yeah.
It's huge in Europe.
Yeah. And then something like Next is written by technologists. And they're technologists who are such technologists that they're almost artists, right? And so they write things that are beautiful to them. But it requires you to know how to wield them. It's like giving you a paintbrush. Everybody can use a paintbrush, but can you use it well?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the challenge that we get with React, that we get with Next, that we get with, really a lot of these Svelte and Vue and so on, is that this stuff is written very bespoke. Every Next code base is a snowflake.
Yeah.
And when you get into it, it's not like, oh, I know Next, I can do this. It's like, all right, how does Frank think?
Oh, totally. Yes.
Let me get the inside of your brain map so that I can.
And that's the thing with React is like everything's a Wild West. So Lori just pinged me and she's like, apparently, we just went to like the OSU fair, engineering fair, where they show off all these projects. And the interesting thing about these projects is that like they get months to work on them, but they don't actually finish them in a year, right? So they actually pass them on from year to year. So I'll ask these kids like, hey, why are you using, like one guy was like using Flutter. For his casino app. Apparently, I don't know, whatever, but this was like also a community project. They're trying to help like native casinos and stuff. So why did you choose Flutter for this? And he's like, I didn't. Like this was when they chose that 2 groups ago, right? And it's just hand me down kind of thing, and that reinforces the guy, these points like, and nobody gets handed down this thing, but a lot of folks get handed down React. And that's why, you run into these issues. But like if I'm working on Solid, there is a huge risk that it's going to be taken over by somebody who only knows React.
Right.
And Solid in particular is vulnerable to this thing, and it's not their own fault. But there are patterns that you 100% should do in React that you 100% should not do in Solid, and they're so subtle,
right?
That like if you were just change a little bit of code, you lose reactivity if you do it this wrong way,
I rewrote
brutal.
I rewrote a lot of Learn with Jason into Solid because I was doing the Astro thing and I had my React components and I was like,
why would you write React?
Yeah, let me make it smaller.
You could have a 4K Solid component.
I hit a lot of stumbling blocks. And like I've been writing code for a long time and Solid it's a mental model shift.
Yeah. And it's also way closer to the metal.
And it is very much so. And
the metal.
It's in the uncanny valley. The metal, yeah, the vanilla. It's way closer to the
metal,
vanilla.
Which is like this huge web platform, sitting on this huge browser platform, sitting on this huge OS platform, sitting on this metal is 10 layers down.
Somewhere in there is
some layer down is the processor.
But I think the thing that was interesting to me is that it's also because it's in that sort of uncanny valley where so much of it looks like React. All of my instincts push me in the wrong way with Solid, and I had to unlearn a bunch of things about the accessors and signals and stuff where I was like, yeah, it works like this, and then it wouldn't work, and I was like, why isn't that? What's going on? Right? and then I had to go read the docs.
Very uncool,
But it all works now, but I still don't really remember how a lot of it works, because I spend so much time jumping between the two now that I'm like I don't.
What are you gonna do for your course when it comes to So you want a client component? Are you gonna do React component?
I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with Astro client.
What do you
components,
guys think?
And then I think what I'm gonna do is I'll probably end up doing a blend of React Vue, probably React and Vue mostly.
Okay.
Because I think those are the two that are probably gonna spend the most time in production.
Yeah.
And then maybe pepper in a little bit of Svelte and Solid as look, you can do this.
Yeah.
I had Arian Diora was on the show. I actually got to meet Arian in person, which was amazing at
I don't know who that
Config. Arian is one of the maintainers of TanStack Query.
Oh.
And he built, let me get this up on screen here. He built this really cool demo that I will pull up here momentarily. Let me get the link on screen. So look at this. No, it's dead. Okay, he took it down.
297. We have to look this up. That can't be bad. I'm hoping that's not bad.
XKCD 297. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
XKCD
297. Is that how it works?
Yeah, usually.
Okay. It's so long since I've read XKCD. So true.
That is a good one.
So true.
I've just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the MIT computer science program permanently.
Yeah. I actually I tried to read that MIT 101 CS book that re-implements Lisp, but at the end I couldn't get through maybe a quarter of it. Sorry.
Sorry, it reminded me of the only time that I've ever been able to follow any of that is Anjana Vakil did this talk about re-implementing lambda calculus.
Oh,
and it is so good. Let me see. I think this is the one. Yeah. The universe in a single arrow, and she re-implements lambda calculus from scratch, and it is incredible. Watch this talk because it's the only time that I've seen somebody talk about low-level math, and I watch the whole talk.
Wow.
Because usually I get two-thirds of the way through, and I'm my brain is
kill me.
Yeah, I'm so lost. But anyway, so Arian built. Let's see, where was it? Arian built this extremely cool. I don't know where the actual thing is, but we use Solid Vue. What else? Let's look at the actual Astro.
Oh, kitchen sink, MFEs.
We used Preact, React, Svelte, Vue, Solid, all together in one.
So, are you binding it together with Nano or something like that to get talking with each other?
How did we do it? We did.
Probably Nano seems to be their go-to when it comes to.
Yeah,
Astro.
I think it was Nano Stores. Let me see.
It's probably Nano Stores.
There's the Nano Stores.
There's the Nano Stores.
Oh, we actually did it in several ways. So this is the Nano Stores version. And then this one uses it's an API. Is it Tanstack Query?
Oh my god. Your font size is like
Why is it so
brutal.
small? It is not. That is not how
Absolutely
I usually
brutal.
do this. Let's get to a regular size.
Poke API. Oh, okay.
Poke API.
Yeah.
But then did he do it with?
Yes.
This is with the fetch.
For a second there, I thought it was like Poke the food, as opposed to Pokemon. The Pokemon.
I thought we got this running in
Pokedex. There you go.
View Evolution.
Good God. Can you imagine being handed this as a code base, though?
Oh my God, it would be.
I would be. Can I find this person and kill them?
Yeah, here it is. So we did it with Tanstack
Woke up one
Query.
morning. Okay.
And so we were able to share between Tanstack
Oh yeah, you can
Query,
use Tanstack Query as its query cache.
and it was all of the store itself.
But again, I would want to kill you for doing it.
Right. And the only reason you would ever do this is if you were to be working in a company that had started out with like each team be free, do whatever you want. And they had built like one team was in Vue, one team is React. This is what happened at IBM. Was the IBM Cloud front end teams got told like, you own a front end, build it in whatever you want. And so when we showed up, there were front ends that were built in Backbone, they were built in Angular, they were built in Vue, and they were built in React. And we got tasked with making that performance somehow. So in that case, something like this would be really interesting because then you can start to bring them together and then do what's it called, the strangler fig pattern, where you sort of so you've got the original application here, and then you put a new application on top and you start proxying to it.
Yes.
And every time you build a new page, this page goes and this page is here,
Yes.
and then you just keep going until you eventually have replaced the entire app, and then this one's gone. And so this is a really interesting way to start implementing that pattern because you can bring in components from the different systems and make them work. And then as you have time, you would just sort of replace the components with their whatever final framework choice you'd made as a team.
Right.
So that you can actually ship one web property and then slowly replace the components themselves. Yeah. Which is actually how I ship Learn with Jason. I had the React and Solid shipping, and I slowly dropped out React components for Solid components until I was done.
Wow.
So it's a really nice way to work.
That's a cool thing that Astro in particular allows you to do.
But to be clear, if you suggested this as like a moving forward pattern, like a permanent pattern, I would have questions.
A lot of questions. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to put React on a page, you should use a lot of React.
Yeah, right. Like, I think that there's a good reason to do some of this stuff. And like, if you only know React, I think it's totally okay. But like a lot of the stuff you can do, let's look at like this one. I think was a little simpler.
I've been impressed with how much I can do with just .astro components.
For real,
to be honest.
I'm kind of trying to push the limits of how far I can take Astro on its own. Like, I like the idea of being able to go to my website and disable JavaScript and still be able to use it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's fun to know that like I haven't broken the website.
Yeah. It's fun. I was playing with I'm doing these like nightly. Just as you do, right? You watching TV or whatever, and you're like, I just want to hack on something. And I was hacking on vector databases again in embeddings, and I took all of the Aliens script from like Aliens, because it's got so many great lines, right? I mean, it is literally like if you had to pick one movie to farm lines from, it would be Alien or Aliens,
right? And
so I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm gonna I go and I take all that, I put it into a vector database, and then I was like, I brought it into Next just because whatever, and to do searching, and I just was using like a form tag and queries, and it's like it just worked, It's like
being able to just use the platform is
it's
one of the things I love about Remix too, like the React router approach is like even if I'm writing a single page app, the vast majority of what I'm doing when I write in React router or Remix is browser standard stuff. And then I'm exporting a loader function, but my loader function is just a fetch call. And that's using the regular fetch API. My action is just using the form data API and like calling, using fetch to like post it somewhere. Yeah. Like that's incredible. Because then when you're done with it and you want to port it to whatever other framework, you're not rewriting a bunch of custom hooks. You're not writing a bunch of custom use effects. You're just porting logic into wherever it needs to go, which is probably going to be, your serverless function, maybe your PHP backend, whatever. But the logic doesn't really change. And I think that was one of the things that always bummed me out after the introduction of hooks, was that it became this thing where logic was very bespoke to React. And that, to me, that's always felt like it kind of gets me kind of like, oh, uh-oh, like I'm worried now, right?
Yeah.
And then I became one of those people who I was a use effect escape hatch for everything, where I just wrote browser code inside of a use effect so that I didn't have to get completely tied into the React ecosystem, which I know was bad.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to have to like completely figure out how to unwind all my custom hooks into whatever the next framework was, because there's always a next framework.
Yeah. And you think Remix really helped you with that?
Remix did, because
Remix is still on top of React. As much as I hate to say it.
Remix is still on top of React. But what was different for me is that when you write a component in Svelte or Vue or Astro, it's the single file component approach. And up top, you write your server logic.
Yeah.
And then you've got your template, and then you've got styles. So throw styles out the window. That's not what I'm talking about. In Astro, you have logic. You look for whether or not a form was submitted, whatever, and then you just kind of feed some data down into the template.
Yeah.
In Remix, you've got your loader, so you do some logic. You've got your action, so you check whether or not something was submitted, and then you feed data down into the template. Yeah. So the mental model feels very single file component, and you're not spreading it between like in Next these days with an app router, you have the use client and the use server. And so as you get into more complicated things, you're pulling like this thing goes out into a hook that can only be in use client, and this thing needs to be used in client and server, so it has to go into a utility function or a utility file that gets imported other places. So your app starts to like disintegrate into lots of app specific files and structures.
Yeah.
Where if you were to go refactor that, now you have to kind of be able to do the archaeological dig of like, okay, so we're on this file, this template goes to here, and then that goes over to here, and then I know that that's like there. And so it gets a little more challenging to like reverse engineer how the thing works.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas with Remix, you're basically just, like, if you're in this file, unless you've abstracted it yourself, it's kind of just there.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the same with Astro or Svelte or Vue. And I think that's sort of the strength of the single file component, is that it defaults to it's here.
Yeah. This is why I think that Remix is a really fundamentally difficult challenge when it comes to React Router 7 or whatever, Remix, whatever that is. And that, like, so much of the app router is defined by RSCs and server actions and how that all fits together, which is not something that Next.js or Waku or React Server or Redwood can control, right? And what React Router has been, and what the Remix folks have been saying for a long time was, it's like, hey, this is our core principles and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know how they're going to balance whatever React Router 7 is with that mentality, because I think a lot of that's going to come into React Router 7. You're not going to have the same Remix feel.
Well,
that
so the way that I understood it, and this might be incorrect, but the way that I understood it is that Remix, as it was in its last iteration, was basically a Vite plugin on top of React Router.
Yeah.
And so React Router 7, I assume, is going to have a standalone mode where you operate it like React Router, or an all-in-one mode where they turn that Vite plugin on.
Yeah,
and
sure.
so my hunch is that you'll be able to use React Router as Remix with the exact same flow, and it'll automatically export, you still export a loader and everything, so it'll just know at the router level to import the loader and put it in the right configuration thing and do all the stuff that Remix does for you.
Right.
But if you don't want to do that, then you can have React Router and not use any of the loaders or actions, and it's just React Router the way you always know it. Or you can do the config-based, like import the loader from the component and put it into the right place on the route so that it gets called at the right time, all that kind of thing. So that's my understanding, is that that's the reason they did it the way they did it.
Okay.
But
I thought they were also bringing in with React Router 7 like RSCs and server actions. Maybe that's
yes.
But they've been prevaricating around that for like years.
I'm not sure. I mean, that's kind of the edge of what I know. I haven't tried what they're doing there. So That will be interesting to see how they manage that. But I do think they've like Ryan and Michael have.
This is when you bring on Ryan Florence and you say, like, let's not talk about lead versus cuts. Let's talk about remix.
Yeah. Well, I've had him on a couple times talking about this stuff, and I think there's it's funny because Ryan Florence on Twitter is like such an inflammatory person, and Ryan Florence in person is
I hear
like
this every time.
So much more. Like I think his sense of humor.
And I agree, actually.
His
sense
sense
of
of humor
humor React actually, like he's just a super chill guy.
His sense of humor doesn't translate to text. Is really where it's at,
true.
right? And so he's not being as mean as he sounds, but he is, yeah. Like, I want him to switch to only video because he's very good on video. But when he talks about this stuff, I think he's very good at thinking about backward compatibility. Yeah. And the way that all of these different things have sort of evolved over time. And I really was impressed by the way that they were able to keep React Router feeling like React Router while introducing all of these concepts like loaders and actions into this sort of config-based flow that didn't break the old component-based flow. Because like when I install React Router, a lot of times I'm just trying to do a quick SPA in like, a Vite app, and I don't care about any of the action stuff. So I'm just doing the component-based routers and
I do a lot of that.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm also jumping between like Next and Vite, just back and forth all the time.
I mean, I love it. I love.
What is on the very edge of all we know? This is your guy Fada?
Not sure what that one is.
Links
don't work in here, so I'm not 100%.
Yeah, so possibly what is that like about Remix? Like what we know about Remix 7? Because I keep hearing just odd things. It was like, there's this blog post.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, Remix is not gonna be what you think it is. React Router 7 has gotten us rethinking everything and all that sort of stuff. It was just like, whoa. Mm-hmm. Thoughts about investing time in leet code? It's a waste.
Leet code is only valuable if you're trying to get a job at Fang. Like if you're going to do a Fang job interview, cram leet code.
Yeah.
Any other application, it doesn't matter.
I hate that. I for years I've been saying that, like, if you want to hire a person to do React, crazy thought, but let's interview them about React.
Yes.
Right? Let's actually just give them a React coding challenge or give them some garbage React code and say, hey, refactor this. I think that's actually my preferred interview styles. Literally, the refactoring thing is actually one of my favorite things.
We would do that actually at Netlify. The job interview that we put together, the technical interview, was we took an issue that had already been solved.
Yeah.
And we backed it out onto a branch, and then we'd actually give it to the person in advance.
Yeah.
We say, we're going to go through this code, and we want to talk about like how we would implement this thing.
Yeah.
And it was usually a thing that was too big to implement in one thing, so in one session, and it was like a 30-minute technical interview. Sure. So our interest wasn't in like how quickly you can code or whether you could get the right answer. It was more, talk us through how you understood this code base. How did you get from the problem that we stated, where are you looking? How are you going to answer this? How are you going to make sure that you don't break something else?
Yeah.
And the way somebody talks through a problem, immediately when somebody is looking at code and talking about it, whether they know what they're talking about. Yeah. Right? It's so, even if they're not a good speaker, you can tell if somebody is just saying like, yes, a curly brace is one of my favorite braces because it's very elegant, And
I prefer the bracket syntax
versus somebody who's saying, but like somebody could stammer their way completely, be terrified of you, and still say, well, use effects can be a problem because it runs multiple times. Like, hey, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. I know, like you are clearly showing the expertise in the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of so I agree with you. Like talking through a code review, through a refactor, through a new feature, like get me some code. The other thing I liked is having people bring something they built.
Yes.
And explaining it
to me. I was literally just going to say that. Yes. Yeah. Show me, walk me through the architecture of a thing that you're proud of.
Yes.
That you've recently built.
And tell me why you made the decisions you made.
Well, not just that, but like find some column of support column of the architecture and be like, oh, this is like a single user thing. Okay, cool. Well, how would I make this multi-user? Like twist it a little bit and see how they adapt to that twist. Like nothing we're talking about right now is covered by leet code. Not at all.
Right.
I just subscribed to this lady. She has 12K subs, and she mostly storytelling, talking a lot about Reddit. I can't remember her name. Code with Colleen, maybe I want to say. Literally just did a video on LeetCode and how LeetCode is just like the dumbest thing ever. And I'm like, how is this not? Like, yeah.
Code with
Colleen. I guess not. No. Okay,
No.
I'll find it. But
right,
I mean, it was an amazing, like, just a great video on like how worthless it is, and there was some Reddit comments about how a person was like had done a Microsoft interview, hadn't crammed on LeetCode, I guess passed the interview, but the interviewer was like, hey, that was really refreshing because so many times I've got folks come in and they're just clearly just like, it's rote memorization,
right?
Of finding substrings and blah 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 blah. And I was interviewing for something, I don't know, a couple years back, and they asked me one of these ridiculous substring questions, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, why would I know that? Like, has no practical bearing on anything that I do.
I failed
ever, and I failed it absolutely miserably.
I failed a meta interview. This was years ago, probably 2014 or so. I got a front end interview. And in my front end interview, they put me into a code editor and said, can you write a binary sorting algorithm in PHP? And I was like, what? And they didn't even tell me to write a binary sorting algorithm. They said, can you sort these things? So I got the things and I wrote .sort.
Yeah, right?
I was like, I'm sure PHP's got the most performant way to do it. They're like, can you do it another way? And I was like, sure. So I like wrote a for loop that did a thing.
Yeah, like a
well,
bubble
can you
sort,
do it
or like this
another way?
Nobody knows quick sort on the back of their hand.
It was,
like,
and it was
ridiculous.
a whole thing. And so then they were like, let's try something else. And I had solved this. I got it right. Like I sorted the thing the way they wanted. They just didn't. They wanted me to do it a different way, but they wouldn't tell me what way.
Right.
And then they were like, okay, well, let's try something else. And then they brought me into a SQL editor and wanted me to write like a complex join query. I was like, what am I interviewing for? They didn't ask me a single front end question.
Yeah.
And then they failed me on the interview, and I was like, did I dodge a bullet? Like,
yeah.
What was that job gonna be like?
And I gotta say, like, as an interviewer, I always want you to win. Like, if you've gotten all the way through to me, like, I am there to help you win, right? I want you to succeed.
Yeah.
And to give people these like ridiculous challenges that are just like have nothing to do
they're
with what they're
trivia
going.
questions,
Why would I? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that we've turned a lot of technical interviewing at certain levels into hazing.
Yes.
It's like, well, I had to suffer to get this job, so you have to suffer to get this job. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. And if you don't guess it, you don't get to work here. Right? It's like, I don't know about that. Like,
okay, yeah. I would never feel bad about getting booted out of a LeetCode interview.
Yeah,
because
I
like
mean,
if that's your litmus, then as you say, you just dodged a bullet. Like
I've actually, when I was interviewing after Gatsby, I had a couple people reach out and I told them, I was like, if your interview involves LeetCode, we should just end it now because I don't study LeetCode and I don't care about it, so I'm gonna fail.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, oh, that's a good point. We'll do a different type of tech interview.
Yeah.
And that was great. And one of them was like, okay, well, we do LeetCode, so we'll just discontinue here. And I was like, weird way to cut yourself off from the applicant pool, but it is what it is.
Way back in the day, a couple years ago, I remember Theo had done something on like how he interviewed for his company, and his thing was like an a la carte menu of different options that you could choose from. Like, okay, you could do the in-person interview, you could do this interview, you could do that interview. They're all weighted the same way. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with, and I love that the ability to like, okay, you don't do LeetCode, cool. That's fine. Let's do something else, right? Because we're still interested in you. We still want you to succeed. Like, if the company is just like grinding through people, they're wasting their own time.
Right.
They're pissing off the community, and the community's not that large.
Right.
And
Well, and it's also kind of like as a company, I don't want a company full of people who grind tests.
Yeah. Right.
Like I think the major challenge is it's sort of like learning how to take tests versus learning how to think, if that makes sense. Like,
that was the point that Code with Colleen or whatever it was making was like, how does this at all benefit us as like you were able to memorize a lot of stuff? Great.
Yeah, I mean, we started on philosophy. Let's get right back into it. And like Western school systems, especially the American school system, is sort of built around this idea that you should be very good at memorizing answers so that you can take standardized tests. And I think that a lot of technical interviewing is built the same way. Like, learn these standardized answers so that you can prove to us that you're a good little memorizer.
Yeah,
and you're good at following instructions.
And here's the crazy thing about it, right? So we always talk about how ADHD and dyslexia, in particular, are two mental models that actually are beneficial to coding. They allow you to think in at a systems level where normal folks, neurotypical folks don't tend to be able to grasp systems at that level that easily. So these are valuable skills. On the flip side of that, being neurodivergent and being dyslexic myself, I was, whatever, I was given that diagnosis when I was 13. One thing I do know for sure is that I cannot rote memorize things because there's no way for me to come up with a system that allows me to remember your name. Right?
Interesting.
There's no equation that I can use to generate a name as an example. So I'm terrible with names unless I really know you, unless we hang out all the time, you and me.
It's several tries.
Right? Yeah. It's like I'll know Jason, right? But unless it's, I just can't do rote memorization, and yet I'm very, very good at coding.
Right.
Because I can understand systems and how they relate. So why basically bias the system against folks that you know are going to be particularly good at that by putting them through a set of skill challenges that are absolutely counter to what you want them to do.
And this is, I think,
ridiculous.
It's because it's built on a system that, the American educational system was designed during the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
We needed people who would be very good at doing repetitive tasks perfectly over and over and over again, right? You needed to be able to work in a factory and pull the lever and check the thing, and it was intentionally mindless because we needed people to work in mindless environments because that was how the economy ran. We've never updated that.
Yeah.
We've never changed from what work was to what work is. And we're getting better, like Common Core math, we're starting to teach kids how to think about math instead of giving them memorization tables of multiplication. So I take that back. We are improving, but when I was in school, when you were in school, we still were given memorization tables for multiplication and stuff like that. Yeah. So my education more or less taught me how to game systems, not how to think. Yeah. And all of the learning how to think came in different ways, mostly by making enormous mistakes and realizing that if I had thought about that harder, I wouldn't have made that enormous mistake.
Yeah. What's brutal is I failed my way through getting out of high school, and that is a maximum amount of education I've ever had. I'm self-taught, all that. But I was working at Nike, and we were volunteering with the Beaverton School District, going into 4th grade classrooms and teaching kids how to use microbits, and they loved it. But what the big thing was that it was the way that we were teaching them was we would show them a little bit about how to use this thing, and then we would let them just go and create their own projects with it. The last one we did was a robotic pet, right? And so you had the microbit, you had the servos, you'd already done a little bit of coding, so you understood how to make those two things talk together. You understood how to make the servo move around. Now go and take that and make make your dog, or make
I want to take this class.
I know, right? And it is a way of learning. I can't remember. It's but it's basically project-based learning, where it's you build things with it. And I'm that's exactly. I was man, if this is the way that they taught when I was in 4th grade when I was a kid, I would have aced school. And I would feel so much better about myself. But yet because I failed my way through everything, have this built-in insecurity about going through tests. Tests to me are I dread the day when my driver's license will expire to the point where I have to take a written test.
Oh my God, I failed my written test.
Oh my God, it is gonna be so stressful. It's gonna be it's gonna be the worst day of my life.
I failed my driver's test the last time I took it. They wouldn't let me pass, and it was one of those ones where I failed on Like how many feet
Oh,
off
yeah,
the
it's
back
ridiculous.
of a truck
Yeah.
can wood hang before you have to hang a flag from it? And I was like, I drive a Prius, dude. Like this question does not apply to me.
Well, okay. I will say I've seen people in Priuses doing some janky stuff.
That's
But, I mean, that's
fair.
Yeah.
But
No, I know exactly what you mean. Like those ridiculous, like, and all of the questions, all the answers are seemingly reasonable. Like that was one of the things about like,
it's like
multiple choice questions are
12
great.
inches, 18 inches, 20 inches. I was like, those are the same distance.
I
like
know.
if it's out the back and somebody could hit their head, hang a flag, right? Like,
You know,
and
why?
like,
Or just do it.
And like
Just
I
do
learned,
it. Just,
I
you know,
learned
like, they give you a flag at the store, like, or they're always free. Just staple one on there. It doesn't matter. If
Right.
it's hanging off the edge, just do it.
well, and like I learned
whatever.
things. I learned things off of heuristics too. Like the distance you should follow somebody is far enough back that you can see their tires over your hood.
Yeah.
If you can see road between your car and their car, you're probably far enough back in like slow speed environments.
That's
right?
a system.
Great.
And
Now
I like systems.
Okay,
That's
actually,
why, that's
so this,
why, that's
this
what I'm
probably,
talking about.
there's a question that I think is really good. So what are your tips for studying when you have dyslexia?
Building stuff.
So-
that
so-
is that is how you study. Is you like, okay, so like as an example, okay. So I was cheating on this guy's thing, right?
What?
No, what? Okay. So he 2 months ago he says, okay, I want you to go. I want you to be on my build this thing with 4 devs, whatever. Build web dev challenge. It's going to be on Astra. It's going to be on vector databases. So I'm like, okay. I'm gonna cram vector databases. So I literally I'm on my elliptical, watching YouTube videos, watching this thing, and the only way it made sense to me, got a certain amount of getting it, I'm not.
Yeah, like,
I'm not
you gotta
entirely dumb.
immerse yourself in jargon, right?
Yeah, you gotta immerse yourself in jargon. But then I was like, okay, so then I got into Astra, right? And I actually tried it out, and so I knew going into it I had some skill. But the only way that I was able to put it into my mental model was to actually try it. Constructivist learning. That's what it's called. It's called constructivist learning. Go Google it, Wikipedia, whatever it is. Constructivist learning is how we teach kids nowadays because it works for everybody. It works for people who aren't dyslexic. It works for people who are dyslexic. It is, constructivism. The idea is we give you a small set of tools and the basic parameters of a project, and then you use those tools to build things. And in the process of building things, you now have that experience so that when people ask you about it, you can then harken back to oh, I did this before, right? And here's the things that I learned about it. Here's a system that I used to understand it. And then you've got your mental model, and there you go. That's to me why Khan Academy works for me really well, because what he does is if you ever want to watch a really good how to understand it course, his explanation of standard deviation and how he walks you through how to figure out what standard deviation is, I can literally still remember it right now, but it's only because I can hear him in my mind going through the steps of how to do standard deviation and all that. And yeah, it's just a really good way to kind of build up on things.
Is it this one here?
Maybe, yeah. Standard, it's literally him. This is very early days Khan Academy, so I don't know if they've replaced it or what.
2014, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Oh, if it loads.
David.
Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy.
But it was basically, I think it was him teaching his nephew or niece how to do this stuff, and that was how Khan Academy got started. Was he wanted to teach his niece how to do math stuff. She had issues about whatever. And he's like, okay, I kind of get this stuff. Here's how I do it. And it's okay, so you want to figure out what the mean value is, and then you take each sample and you see how far it is away from the mean, and blah, 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 blah. And there you go. Of course, I'm probably getting it wrong. Right? But what...
Well, it's funny too because the explanation
it's either the mean or the median. I don't know why median exists. Seems like the dumbest thing to me ever.
Wait, how does it? What's the
so
difference?
mean is
one of them
all
is
the numbers.
if you just do all the numbers
the sum
and
of
then
all
you
the numbers
average.
over the average numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other one is you drop the highest and lowest.
No. The other one is literally you take all the numbers and you literally just whichever number is in the middle, it's sorted, and then whichever the number is in the middle, that's the median. Wait, why? Why? I don't know why that's a thing. That doesn't make
Seems
any
like
sense to me
that
at
gives bad data.
I mean, it's interesting to like look at the difference between the mean and the median, but I don't know why you want the median in isolation like that.
Yeah, who knows?
But what was your right? The back of the tires thing. That's the way that I learned exactly this. I had a guy in Miami who was like, if you can see the tires ahead of you, you're good.
Right.
And I had a guy when I was going back and forth between Australia and America. I was always having to go, wait, which side of the road am I on? Which side am I? And the guy who I was working with told me, you want to be in the lane that gives you the maximum road visibility.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be away from the curb.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't like that. No. Left lane only to pass.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like, okay, so like in America, we drive on, our wheel is on the left-hand side.
Right.
And so when we drive on the right-hand side, because being in the left-hand seat gives you the maximum visibility.
I understand what you mean.
Right?
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
But if you're in the right-hand seat and you're kind of looking under the road, you're like, whoa, I'm way over here. Where am I
when
going?
You see
I don't know.
Those Japanese camper vans that are in fashion right now. We've got a lot of people rolling around in Japanese cars which have the steering wheel on the right.
Oh, yeah.
And so you see it happen, and it's kind of like, wait a minute.
I was in New Seasons in Happy Valley, and there was a full-on like Japanese fire truck. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Man,
like one of those really small ones. It looked like it was out of a Miyazaki film. It was like I literally want to sit there for an hour and just be like, this is cool.
Dude,
whoever this person is, I want to hang with them.
I really wish that some of those like Asian trucks were allowed over here, because we've passed all these tariffs to make them impossible to bring
And in
over.
our streets,
yeah,
so good.
We've got teeny tiny streets. Ugh, we're not getting rid of parking.
Terrible.
And their trucks, like a Japanese truck, has the footprint of like a Fiat.
Right.
But you can haul a full load of something in it.
Yes.
But it's
like a TARDIS in a car.
And then we're not, it's not tough enough or something. So and of course it would cost $17,000. So we have to like gotta justify the price of an F-150. So you have to raise the tariffs until it's like. But yeah, it's like, oh, this whole thing is it's so frustrating to me, because that's all I want. I want one of those teeny tiny little Japanese trucks. Because
I have dyslexia and I have a problem with programming terms.
Yeah, I think this is the finding a way that works for your brain is so challenging. But it does, like, I will agree. I've never met anybody who didn't learn by doing.
Yeah.
Like, there's different ways of getting the initial information. Like, I know I'm not a very good auditory learner. So, like, if there's a lecture with no visuals, I don't retain very much.
Yeah.
I'm a very good visual learner, which is why I watch videos, and why, like, if I'm trying to learn something for the first time, the first thing I'm going to look for is a video of somebody building a project from scratch.
Yep.
So that I can see them connecting dots and like doing the thing for the first time.
Yeah, giving you that snapshot memory of like, oh, this is, the vector, like, here's the flow of like, you're going to have your text, and that's going to create these embeddings, and it's going to go to the AI, and the AI is going to create the embeddings, and the embeddings are going to go with the vector, and blah, 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 blah. All that sort of stuff.
It's actually kind of one of the reasons I love that in the Web Dev Challenge, Carter used the whiteboard. And the other, like in one of the other episodes, they didn't use the whiteboard. And I was like, man, I think I might make it mandatory to use the whiteboard.
I really do think you should go with the graphics.
Like drawing, like actual graphics.
Yeah, like maybe for post-production for the viewers, yes, graphics. I mean, obviously having him there to like walk through it live just was good, right? So that's handy. If I hadn't crammed and cheated. But, like, okay, so let me talk about dyslexia for a second to you. Okay, so I was doing this fourth grade thing, and I was talking with one of the teachers, because you get time with the teacher before and after the class and recess and all that sort of stuff, right? And she was saying that one of the kids was showing up only, like, had dyslexia and was only showing up when I would show up, which I don't know how that worked, but whatever. And he really felt like he was failing, but somehow when I talked to him and I said, I have dyslexia too, and he said that he could be successful because if I could do it, then he could do it too. And it was, I understand, like, I really do. And I get that it's a challenge. You can be successful. I've been a principal engineer at big companies, very successful in my career. So I know it's a struggle, but you can do it. I know, I'm gonna cry. But, it's so hard. Like, I understand that feeling of like, that society is telling you over and over and over again you're a failure because you go through these tests and like they're asking you these dumb questions that you have to memorize. And you're like, why is everybody else able to do this and I am not? But yet at the same time, there's superpowers that you have that other folks don't.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the piece that bums me out about the way our educational system is set up, is it only rewards one type of learning. But
ridiculous.
The most functional teams have a really broad set of skills. And if everybody thinks exactly the same way, you immediately get teams painting themselves into a corner.
Yep.
And like there's a lot more disagreement when you've got a team that thinks in different ways, because if I'm a super, like by the book memorization, like spec driven person and you're not, we don't communicate the same way.
Yeah.
But we're going to see different sides of the problems. Yeah. And I think that's another like that's good conflict in a team. Yeah. Right. Like if I remember when I was at IBM, one of the big conflicts I had was actually about interviewing, because I only wanted to interview for people who thought like me. I was building a system around my worldview. Yeah. Right. And so I had a couple things that I suggested. Like I had a whole thing that I did. This, you're gonna laugh because this is not like, I'm not like this at all anymore. But I remember saying in a meeting, well, if they don't have a valid GitHub, we should just automatically DQ them.
Okay.
Like I was like, yeah, if they don't have an active GitHub, DQ them. And
you mean interviewing wise?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Right? It's terrible. Like a completely terrible approach. Yeah. But in my world, like the people who think like me, we put our work in public, and it's very much a part of our like understanding is to put stuff out there. And so then I got gently pulled aside, and this is I think everybody.
And thank you for sharing that, because that's vulnerable. Like I mean,
I have a theory that like if not everybody, at least every white guy has a moment in their career where they are pulled aside because they have been very confidently wrong about something.
Oh, yes.
And this is where you get to choose whether or not you're going to have a villain arc, because you're going to get told that you're wrong, and you're going to know that you were wrong, and you have a choice. You can either admit that you were wrong, accept the feedback, and then do work to become a better person and understand other worldviews, or you can close off those other worldviews and only talk to people who agree with you. Yeah. Right. And I think that we can see the outcomes of that. Yeah. In there's some folks who are like pretty famously like this. I think like Donald Trump and Elon Musk are two really good examples of white guys who got challenged, and rather than learning, they double down and they double down and they double down until they're now with a group that only says yes to them, and you can see how detached from reality you become. That's the villain arc, right? Yeah. And then I think there are people who were wrong, and they admit that they were wrong, and they grew. And now, like I think Keanu Reeves is a great example of this. Somebody who's had a super visible, super public career, and it hasn't been perfect, but has always been willing to like be a little bit better. Yeah. And now has this sterling reputation as somebody who is cool, helpful, thoughtful, kind. Yeah. And, as far as I know, there's not any like real dirt on Keanu Reeves, despite this being a very wealthy, very visible, very public figure. Yeah. Right. And I think that's a choice that we get to make. Right. Yeah. And so I was very lucky that I had people who were willing to have that conversation with me and challenge me on it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I guess I was lucky myself because I chose to listen. Yeah. Instead of like getting tough and quitting that job and going finding a startup full of dudes that were just like me. Yeah.
I like being called out when I'm wrong.
Dude,
to be honest. Yeah, absolutely.
Like the worst thing I can imagine is finding out after the fact.
Oh yeah.
That somebody was unhappy with me.
Oh, totally.
Like I want the opportunity to recover. Yeah. But you can only get that opportunity if you are very clearly projecting the energy that you are willing to listen to feedback. Yeah. Right? Because if the energy that you project is I will retaliate if you call me out on my shit, nobody ever wants to give you feedback. They're just going to get in the back channels and talk crap
and talk crap about you. Yeah.
And so I think there's like it is not fun to be wrong, but it is way more fun to be wrong than to be ridiculed in private.
Yeah.
Anyways, little life advice.
There you go. Evil Vinny. What is it?
Evil Vinny and more evil Vinny.
Jason doesn't need to be a villain. He has there's actually that helps a lot. Like I will say, like my YouTube crew like keeps me on my toes. Yeah. Like and it's actually wow. There are definitely times when I think I I had a video just recently. It didn't do all that well on Use Optimistic. And the guy's like, some comment was like, no, you got this all wrong. Like 100% wrong. And I'm like, I don't think so. Because I mean, okay. But I looked into it and did a lot of research, and I could see. It's funny because I held his viewpoint before I actually tried it, and then after I tried it, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to replace my mental model on this entirely with this new mental model, which is better and worse and yada yada. But like, and I kind of tried to get him there, but like, actually, he just kind of disappeared. I think it's just didn't like being called like
it's
wanted
hard
to be right, but like, yeah, I don't know. Actually, one of the things that I think is a little. I think there's a psychology thing to be had here on programming patterns that we see in junior developers that like do not serve them well. Like one is getting locked into an idea of a technology and not wanting to change at all. Like because it works for me and I want it to stay stable and never change. Like I've been doing this for 40 years. I can tell you that is not the way to have a long career in coding.
Well, and it's sort of that like it's getting locked into what ends up being superstition almost, right? Where you did it one way and it worked, and then you believe like, oh, well, we always have to, it's in like Apocalypse Now, like stay on the boat, like we're always safe if we stay on the boat.
Stay on the boat. Stay on the boat.
But it's ultimately like you're not any more or less right. You found one pattern that works.
Yeah.
And you're cutting off so many options if you never allow yourself to be challenged and explored.
Yeah.
But I think that what's really interesting with that type of pattern though is if you think about what makes somebody a quote unquote 10x developer, right? Somebody who is considered hyper effective. It's almost always that they can't be defeated. Like when something goes wrong, they go, okay, well, I've seen other ways to try this, so let's flip it this way and go this way instead.
Right.
It's this sort of resilience to failure.
They're almost fascinated by defeat.
Right, because they don't see it as like I'm bad. They see it as, oh, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah, totally.
Right, and they can go so fast. Like there's no recovery period almost because it was never something.
It was never like a thing. It's like
my identity isn't tied up in this line of code. Who cares? Yeah, rip it out. Like I tried to write a reducer and it turns out reducers are hard. Fine, for loop it is. Like let's go.
That's the funny thing. I think people default to this perception that like. Every package that goes into package JSON or something like that is this thing that people are going to endlessly fight over.
Right.
If you want to pull it out or something, it's like, no. Like at least for me, it's like, I don't care. Less is more. Let's go. If you can find out a better way, I'm all ears.
Right.
Yeah.
And like there's stuff that I think the other thing too is realizing that there's no such thing as a right answer.
Yeah. No.
Right. There are only approaches. It's just like
only
art.
Pros and cons.
You can't like say there's a correct way to do art because it's art if you do sculpture, it's art if you do painting, it's art if you
it's art if you code,
right? All of it. It's an expression, and there's no such thing as like a wrong expression.
Right.
There's hateful expression, and we should, but like I think in terms of getting an idea out of your head, if you're trying to accomplish something, the path to it isn't what matters. The outcome is what matters. And so if you are trying something and it's a dead end, that doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean you have to defend your reasoning and convince everybody that actually what you did was right and here's why the outcome was wrong. Like, no, let it all go.
It's just wasting people's time.
Yeah, pour it down the sink and try it again.
Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Code is free. We can
right.
Your time, actually, the time you spend arguing in favor of bad code is the most expensive
the wasted
thing, right?
That's the wasted
time. And
it
also
burns
time. It burns other people's time. It burns social capital, which makes it harder for you to get things done in the future. Like, if you make a mistake, stop, own it, and redirect.
And in fact, actually, I'm willing to burn time with you to show you a different, maybe better way, if I believe that at the end of that, you will change your own behavior, such that in the future, you won't find yourself in that position where you're trying to fight a battle. Like, I want you to lose the battle in a way where you understand that maybe the battle wasn't a good thing to have in the first place.
I think, yes. Right? And I think this is
to grow as an engineer, because that's one of the, that is a core skill that you need to grow.
That's a really good point. And like people were talking about, a couple folks asked if this was like a beginner stream. Well, let's talk to the beginners for a second.
Yeah.
One of the most effective things that you can do in your career is being aware that you're not right, and that not being right is not a character flaw. It's every single one of us, like
every day,
20 years each in this industry, and I still don't know shit. The industry moves fast. It is way bigger than I will ever be able to fully understand. And so I am going to be wrong, and I'm going to not know a solution. And if I get caught up on that, on like whether or not I was correct, I close myself down from learning. I close myself down from conversations that would lead somebody to trust me more. I close myself down from being able to make the team better by making it a teachable moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
All of those, I close my team down from feeling like they can be wrong, because if they only look at me being defensive about ever being wrong, then they learn that they have to be defensive about being wrong.
Yep.
So all of these things are very, very expensive in the long run.
Yeah.
And if you can just embrace the idea that like your ability to solve a task isn't in getting it right on the first try, it's in being willing to flex until you find the solution.
Yes.
That's what makes somebody great, right? There's a million different ways to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And I think being able to really like steer into that, to embrace it, to know that the journey is the destination in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because every time you screw up, you just learned another thing that you're not going to do next time, and that made you better.
Yeah. In fact, like, going back to that example of like they use optimistic thing, it was like I wanted to know, like, am I wrong? Like, I really want to know, because like if it's going to change my understanding of things and my perception of things, I love that. Like, I love when things challenge my perception and my understanding of how things work.
Right.
Because then I get to grow as an individual and or as in understanding. I mean, when it comes to like beginners, I think the biggest thing to do is like, if you get stuck, like, don't immediately rush out for help.
Right.
Like, try working through it. I know that like it's really sad. Like I went to OSU and, you know, we're walking around like taking pictures of my kid, you know, graduation pictures and stuff. And on every like room, they've got these little banners that talk about like, if you get stuck, before you get stuck, reach out for help. And I'm like, what? At least in engineering world, that is the exact counter. I would say get stuck for a little while, try different ways to get out of it, right? And then, you know, see, you know, just try the basic science stuff. Like, if I change this variable, what happens? If I just change that variable, what happens? And try and gauge out what the underlying mechanism is. And then, if you're stuck for a while, cool, reach out or use ChatGPT or whatever. But like, give yourself that time to go through the machinations of figuring stuff out, because that's engineering. Getting stuck and finding your way out is 99.9% of engineering.
Right. And I think,
the happy path, that never happens unless you cheat, like I did on your web dev challenge. Because I already pretty much knew what I was going to do.
But I do think there is a...
Because that's what I do.
And I think, yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing, like when somebody comes to me when I was a tech lead, and somebody would come to me and say, I'm stuck, I would always ask, like, what have you tried?
Yeah, what have you tried?
And if they told me something like, I have been working on this for 4 days, I was
Yes.
like, hey, okay, next time, give it like an hour and a half.
Then
And if you're still stuck after an hour and a half, come find me.
You're also lying.
well-
Nobody's stuck on something for 4 days. Come on.
Well, one of the
Maybe they are. I don't know. But
in a fully remote world, the thing that sucks is that the juniors don't know how to reach out.
Yeah.
Because if you've never been in it, like, you can't. So one of the things at IBM that was really good is that we worked in the office like 3 to 4 days a week, and as the tech lead, I would sort of, if I came to a break, I'd sort of like scoot back in my chair and I'd look around at everybody else, and you would see somebody like this.
Yes.
Right? And so I would just scoot over to their table. I'd be, hey, what are you
what's
working
going
on,
on, man?
And then
Yeah.
they'd be like, I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm like, talk me through it. And usually just by explaining it to me, they'd figure out what was wrong.
Yep.
But a lot of times you could sense that somebody was stuck, and you would show them that it's okay to ask.
Yeah.
And remotely, I can't see that you're
Yeah,
stuck.
that is tough.
And so I
That
can't
is
show
really
you
tough.
that it's okay to ask. And
Yeah.
so what we noticed was a lot of juniors would go quiet.
Yeah.
And then you have to set up a meeting with them and say, like, hey,
Hey,
I
what's
haven't
going
seen you
on?
in the Slack for a little bit. What's going
Yeah.
on? And then maybe they'll tell you, or maybe they'll say, oh, I'm just working through my to-do items, because they don't want to admit that they're stuck.
Yeah.
And so there's this really big challenge, I think, with remote work in, like, how do we appropriately onboard and get juniors feeling comfortable to raise flags and not treat them like a burden when they do, because obviously we're all super busy. The Slack lights up and somebody says, I need help. Everybody kind of goes, oh, I hope somebody else will take that, right? Which is that's not the attitude that we want.
I got the time. Like, I'm in. Yeah.
And that was actually, like, we realized very quickly when I was at Netlify that we had a junior quit because they didn't have the support system they needed.
Yeah.
And that was devastating, because I was so confident that we were like the welcoming team that was going to be the right support system for a junior. And they put in their notice and they were like, I don't know how to get anything done and I'm not getting support. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That hurts.
So then we had to like sit down and really think about this. Like the manager had to actually put time on their calendar for active pair programming. We had to have an active curriculum for how to get them in and make sure that they were hitting milestones. Really needed to be checking in every single day, being like, all right, what'd you work on? Did you get stuck? Anything I can help with? And then we had to model the behavior of showing that we ask questions. Right? So we had to like almost tell the team like, hey, even if you don't like really need help, run through a scenario with us in Slack so that people can see that it's okay to ask questions. And when we did that, our juniors succeeded. But it was a very conscious cultural shift. That before we were like, oh, we're all great mentors. We've all mentored people before. We're good at this, so it will be great. We hired a junior, and the junior completely failed.
Oh wow!
Through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other thing too. Is like,
and you got to be able to learn from that. Right? As a
Yeah.
culture, you have to be able to learn from that, or else you're that's not.
Yeah, you're in a lot of pain if that's the because I mean it's just so hard.
And it kind of comes back to that whole educational system thing, right? You know, the rote memorization. If the litmus is that I'm going to tell you this thing once, and you're going to do it and repeat it back to me exactly verbatim, and if you don't, and that's a pass, and if you don't, then that's a fail, then that one, that's not at all engineering, and two, it's just a terrible, like, what is that? That's not like all you're asking for is like a machine just to train an LLM.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. And I mean that sort of points at I would say the shortcomings of LLMs is that like LLMs are good at taking a list of rules and generating output that's according to the rules. But what we haven't figured out how to do with LLMs is like combine ideas, generate new ideas. Yeah. And so that I think I've been thinking a lot about what does resilience look like in a career? Like how do you become resilient to technological shift, to technological change? And a lot of it is this ability to learn how to think, to learn how to collaborate, to learn how to work with a team.
Learn how to learn.
Even if the LLMs figure out how to code perfectly, somebody still has to describe the application to the LLM. Someone still has to coordinate with the team so that we're all describing the same application to our various LLM inputs so that we're building something that works, right? And all of that is a core part of our skill now that we can sort of hide by being really good at coding. And the more the code becomes commoditized by anybody being able to build anything, you know, with medium coding knowledge, you can probably talk an LLM through building a lot of complex features these days. If you're a good communicator and a medium coder, I think you're more resilient than a great coder who's a bad communicator.
Totally.
And so I think that's another thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is like, how do you build a career that's going to survive not just whatever happens with AI, because I actually think AI is starting to hit the top of the power curve, where we
this generation of AI is definitely
we're into incremental gains, and it's going to get really, really hard to move from where we are now to like the next big leap.
So only so many hydro dams that we can pull. You know.
Right. We're gonna have to be. What's the Dyson sphere? We're gonna have to.
Yeah, I think they were like projecting like 20% of the Earth's total energy output, like would be necessary in the next couple of years to create the base models in the first place, and it's like. What are we getting out of this?
Yeah, that's probably not doable, right? Like, you know, turning the entire GDP of Europe into one company's burn rate seems like maybe a bad idea.
It seems,
but all that being said, like I do think that, you know, I'm thinking a lot about resilience.
Yeah, I did a short exactly on this. And it keeps going. It's like the thing that just keeps on getting views and views and views. So basically, why I said, like, why I know AI won't replace me.
Yep.
And it was, 60 seconds on, like, it won't know how to talk to people. It won't know how to, there's a whole lot of soft skill stuff. As I said, like, my favorite person to work with is this product manager. And we were just on the same exact wavelength about stuff. And she would handle her side of the house. I would handle my side of the house, and it was this awesome collaboration. How is an AI going to get into that middle? I don't know. You know, that's not going to happen.
I mean, AI is going to be wonderful as a tool to take notes to synthesize what we talked about into a quick summary so that we can remember next time we meet what we need to touch on. It's not going to be like, I'm not going to be able to open up an AI and say, all right, so I'm thinking about this thing and I want to build it this way. And all right, is there anything I'm not thinking about? Yeah. Right? It's gonna tell me something, but I don't know that it's gonna be useful.
It's like, at that point, it's like tarot cards. It's like how you interpret the output. You're like, oh, I kind of get that, whatever.
And I think that it's sort of like the way that I've been using LLMs and stuff is largely as a rubber duck.
Yeah.
Right? I think that one of the ways that I've been able to break through writer's block is by sitting down with somebody and I'll start explaining what I'm working on. And so if I don't want to bore Marissa with a technical topic, I can go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, I'm writing an article about XYZ. Give me like 10 talking points that might be interesting. And it gives me 10 talking points and I don't like any of them, but 2 of them combined make something kind of interesting. So it gives me a direction to walk in. And I think that that's a really good use of LLMs is if you think of them as almost like it's almost like a sounding board that gives you a different, like it's like pressing shuffle on your ideas, kind of. But it's not going to generate new things, and it's not going to, like the gestalt of you in an LLM is never going to match the gestalt of you and a differently talented but equally talented person.
Yeah. Denis Villeneuve talked about how there's this whole thing in directing where you kill your children.
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings.
That's an old like editing.
Yeah. Kill your darlings. So, which is much better than what I had in my mind. So, kill your darlings. Like, I do this thing nowadays where I'll just vent into an LLM. Like, here's the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. Here's like a basic script, and I know I'm getting too in the weeds on this and that and the other thing, and I'll have it kind of just tighten it up. And it's going to tighten it up because it's going to kill my darlings. It's like, I know I want to get into like, is this a cosine or a dot product thing or whatever? And it's like, no, you don't need to do any of that. Like, here's kind of what, if you're just doing an intro or something like that, here's the bang, 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 bang kind of thing so you can get people into it. And that's a nice use for LLMs.
I think, like taking, I almost never use the text output of them, but what I do like is, there's this joke that has been run with me and folks that I've worked with forever that I'm not capable of writing something under 3,000 words.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if I take my 3,000 words and I dump it into ChatGPT and I say, give me 5 bullet points that summarize this.
Yeah.
I see the headlines and I can realize quickly like, oh, this section actually just needs to be a different blog post.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important, but it's clearly not related to what I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
And it's a good way because that's what I would do with an editor.
Yeah.
As well, right? And so I like, if I have an editor, sometimes I can't afford an editor. and so being able to just work with kind of this is work that I've done on my own, but it sort of goes faster if you dump it in and you say, all right, what are the 5 major points that I'm making?
Yeah.
And I think, the idea of outlining to prose to outline to prose is a really good exercise anyways to kind of say, like, what do I want to say? Okay, what did I say? What's important that I need to keep from this? All right, now, what needs to kind of...
I think as engineers, like, we have a uniquely interesting problem of we always want to talk with an immense amount of specificity.
Yes.
Like, we want to, like, it's really hard for us to, like, say, kind of, like, take a thing and summarize it in a way that's not exactly accurate.
Well, I'm just going to hand wave over this concept.
Yeah, like marketers can hand wave all day, but engineers are like, whoa, okay, you're not hitting this one little edge case over here, and that's actually kind of important.
Well, I mean, that's like the origin of the reply guy, right? Is somebody says like, I use this thing for this use case, and somebody goes, actually, what you did isn't exactly the right. I wouldn't call it that because of X, Y, Z, and it's like, yeah, I know. I know that. Yeah. I know that I didn't do a full dissertation on this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super challenging, and like...
And it's very challenging, too, on YouTube, because, like, so many comments will be like, you didn't get into this weed over here, and it's like, yeah, but like,
it's like, hey, that's a great topic for a video.
Another video, exactly. Or you could write a Medium article on it.
Maybe you should remix my video and drop your own version that goes into the nuance, which is actually, by the way,
proper excerpting, please.
Yes, but I think that is a great way to source content for anybody who's looking to get into content. Is like if you see an incomplete thought, just finish the thought. Like if you wanted to see some context that wasn't included, just include it.
Yeah.
And like say, I watched this video from Jack. He talked about this, but the video wasn't long enough to go into the details. I want to go into the details. So here's my video on this detail.
And reach out to me. I will let you excerpt a portion of my video where you think I would have, like I should have gone into more detail. And I will not give you access to the whole video.
Right,
It is copyrighted.
Right.
You can't watch the whole thing and react to it. But like you can do that. Take an excerpt and then put it in your own video and say like, oh look, there you go.
And that's good. That's like old school blogging culture was one of my favorites back before we had like the kind of Twitter had become mainstream. Yeah. You had MySpace and stuff, but like people weren't using it like that. People had blogs, and so you would get like an List-Apart article would go live.
Yeah,
and it would have, it'd be somebody talking about progressive enhancement. And somebody would disagree with a point on that, so they would then pull a quote out of the List-Apart article, link back, and then they would write an article on why they felt that like this part wasn't actually progressive enhancement, it was unnecessary for XYZ reasons. And then somebody would write another article, they would excerpt that, and you would get this whole
And then List-Apart would come back and like, here's
and they would do like the super article, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it was amazing because the discourse was sort of cited, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things
scientific citing.
And I do miss that these days it feels like we're incentivized to make a video that feels very standalone. And so like, I am Jason, these are my thoughts on thing. And like, I'm very guilty of this because a lot of times I'm like, I don't have time to go figure out what everybody said. And I also don't make a lot of content that ricochets off what other people are talking about.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other thing that honestly I should get better at, because a lot of times we'll have great conversations offline.
Yes.
And I just never turn on a camera to talk about it online.
I know. This is what I need to. This is what I'm personally trying to get to is lighter weight content where I use, as I said, like that last night's experiment. I just want to go and take the stuff that I learned last night, put it into a video, and give it to you. Here's the code. Go.
Yes.
And like I think that there's value in that. Okay, hold on. You got any advice for getting a high-paying remote job for an experienced dev?
In today's market?
Yeah, I don't know.
Network your ass off?
Yeah, exactly.
I think like
that works.
If you want to
make content,
make some and like content. I feel like content has been sort of oversimplified into like YouTube videos or like engagement posts on Twitter. It's more than that. Like you can make a open source library that solves a problem that you have. You can make a toy that plays with some technology that shows off some interesting feature of it.
Yep.
You can I don't know, benchmark some shit to show that you're really good at like breaking down the performance characteristics of something. Like there's so many ways that you can build in public, you can create in public, you can start a podcast and talk to all the people that you respect in the industry. There's a great market. I mean, podcasts are hard to break into because you got to be good at that. But it's easy to start and it's hard to make matter. Is maybe the right way to talk about podcasts.
The easiest formula that I've ever heard was, hey, if you get stuck on a problem, you're working on, I don't know, Postgres vectors or who knows what, and you Google search for it and you're like, hey, I couldn't find an article that actually did that. Once you got it figured out, write that article. Because then somebody else is going to search for it to find you and be like, hey, that that person knows what they're talking about.
I think
it's a pretty simple formula.
This was a really a common strategy. So at Netlify, I would always tell the team, if you find yourself Googling an error and there's nothing but Stack Overflow for that error, write an article. Write the how to fix this problem. And I just did this. I just did this twice, and in both cases, it's been a big SEO boon. I hit the dreaded hydration error in Next.js, and there wasn't like an article on this, so I put it on the Netlify blog, how to fix the Next.js hydration error.
Yeah,
it is one of their top performing SEO articles.
Yeah,
right. And then I did it on my own site for how to get. This was before the form data API came out. It was like how to get form data as JSON, because it's a super common thing to Google, and everything is an MDN article, which is good, but it's very reference. Yeah. Or a Stack Overflow answer where it's people arguing over the best way to do it, and a lot of it's like very bespoke. So I just wrote an article, and then later when the Form Data API came out, I updated that article.
That's one of the great things about articles is you can actually update them later.
I know video doesn't work that way. But I think like there's so much value in that. And like to this day, I get 20 to 30,000 SEO hits on my blog.
Wow.
Every month.
Good Lord.
Because I've written stuff like how to get form data as JSON,
Yeah.
how to...
Yeah.
I have one that it was like a throwaway post for me, more of a note for me, how to extract individual audio tracks out of a video using FFmpeg. How to use multiple cores when you encode video using FFmpeg. Stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Like the little things that I was doing, I couldn't find a good article, so I tried some stuff and I put together my solution, I put it on a blog.
Yeah.
And it turns out lots of people Google that.
Yeah. If you're making like a Notion, if you got like a Notion that, you know, you're just adding into notes, like, you know, as I say, like, oh, I want to take an MKV file and extract the the MP4
right
in copy mode, like whatever. Like literally that, like you can make a Medium article that's 300 characters. You know, like literally just like, I need to do this, blah, 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 and done. You know,
right?
Like, I talking to a kid who was over. He literally was like, hey, I saw you at like the local React meetup. You were surrounded by people. I was intimidated. I didn't want to talk to you, but I do want to talk to you. Like, cool. Hey, let's go get coffee. So met him. Turns out he's just out of high school. Had done like a code school sort of thing, but still couldn't find a job. And I was like, and he was just talking to me about what he's doing. And one of the things he was doing was using, he didn't want to use Copilot, didn't want to pay for it. So he used OpenLlama and Continue, and which is like basically to use his own machine as the LLM for Copilot, as a replacement for Copilot. And I said,
fascinating. I
don't know how to do that. Write a Medium post on it. I'll give you feedback on it. Go. And he did it, and that's I don't know how it's done, but like that's getting his name out there.
Right.
I mean, I also did connect him with a friend of mine who runs a consultancy, and we got him a job, so that was good.
Okay, but you just, so I think you just illustrated two important
But the fact that he
points.
could write the article was, to me, like that was it was only after that I recommended him to my friend, because I'm like, okay, this kid, he's got it. Like there's something going on. He knows he's got some basic good engineering level skill stuff. I
have been able to find, hey, Twitch mods, can you ban whatever this latest one is? But so you, like, when I'm looking at the community, like a lot of people are looking at the community and they want to get into it. They want to get into the network, or like hiring managers are saying, like, I don't want the same two people on my interview docket all the time. How do I find somebody new? Yeah. And they're saying, who would you recommend, right? And so you, me, a bunch of folks who are pretty well connected, we're always looking around for new faces.
All the time.
And like I'm doing Web Dev Challenge, I'm doing Learn with Jason. I always need new people to talk to because I don't want it to be the same. Like I don't want it to be
on the next episode of Web Dev Challenge.
I mean, I do definitely want to be able to bring people back.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure that we're featuring new people all the time, right? And like, the people I'm going to notice aren't the people who are quietly doing an amazing job. It's going to be the people who share. Yeah. It's going to be the people who are putting themselves out there. Because how am I supposed to see you? Yeah. Right? Like, what insight do I have into what you're doing other than what you tell me? Yeah. And I think that's the major challenge in this market. It is noisy as hell. Everybody's going off recommendations and referrals. Yeah. You have to be out there enough that somebody can refer you.
What do you think about contracting?
I think contracting is great if you can get a contract.
Well, I mean, if you can get set up with an agency, right? So you can get in there and start doing contract gig work. I mean, it's not what you want to do necessarily. A lot of folks want the 9 to 5 inside a company, but a way to network is to do that gig work and to get that resume going that has all of the stuff in it. You know,
that was how I started. Was I did like agency stuff, right? I did not agency. Like I was a freelancer, and I started going to a local programmers meetup in Montana. Yeah. And meetups. Yeah. There were like 14 people in that meetup. None of us wrote the same code. Yeah. Because we were all, there were just no programmers at this point in time. So I'd go hang out with like a Java developer and a C developer, and we'd be like, computers, right? They're kind of cool. But what ended up happening is like, I at the time was writing PHP. And so somebody would recommend, like they'd get a lead on a job and they knew it was WordPress.
That guy
so they'd tell like, hey, you know, I can't do that, but you should talk to Jason. So I'd get a referral to like help somebody clean up their WordPress install.
Right.
Wasn't much, but it was something.
Yeah.
And it got me some paid work.
Yes.
And then that person also had a web guy, and they could refer their friends who weren't web people to me, which then led to a couple more clients. It built my portfolio. I was still meeting more people in the programming industry, and then like a couple years in, I hit up Chris Coyer cold, and I said, hey, I've been building this like little CMS thing. I want to write an article for CSS Tricks about how to build a simple PHP CMS. And he was like, well, I don't pay for articles or anything. I was like, that's cool. I mean, this was early days. It was just Chris. I was like, he's like, I don't pay for articles. I was like, well, that's not why I'm doing it.
Yeah,
I was like, cool.
Yeah, no.
If you want to do it, let's do it. And I wrote the article, and it turns out it was like a right place, right time thing. It ended up hitting the front page of Dig. It was very popular. Got me a book deal. My first book came off my first article.
Nice.
So like very like it hit the right note in the community. Got pretty lucky in that sense. But also I was ready, right? When the opportunity came down, I was ready to go. And so I wrote my book on PHP 5 and something. It was basically like a zero to. I read the PHP docs and made a book out of it, more or less. But it was sort of built. It was that was the little opportunities.
Yep.
I cold pitched Chris because I was building enough stuff with PHP that I felt like I had something to say, and I was like, I could share this and I could put it on my blog, but nobody cares. But everybody reads Chris's blog, maybe Chris will care.
Yeah.
And he was cool enough to let me take a shot despite having no idea who I was. And I did a good enough job that later he and I did like collaborative articles, which really helped me, kind of got me into the circuit and stuff. But like, if I hadn't asked, right, if I wasn't putting stuff out there, and he was able to go to my blog and see the stuff that I'd written, I had like 2 or 3 articles on there. So you could at least see that I wasn't...
Can this guy put 2 words together kind of thing? Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so each of those things is like, it was a little effort from me to give somebody looking a bit more confidence. And then each one of those steps widened the circle of people who would be willing to look in the first place. And I think that that's been the secret to my career all along, is just, do stuff and tell people about it.
Do stuff
And tell people about it is a shockingly underrated strategy.
Yeah, totally. My first book deal I got because I criticized the heck out of this Java book that I was reading. It was filled with XSS errors and SQL injection errors.
Yeah.
And I went on Amazon and I just like, oof, like literally this page has a SQL injection. Do not follow this code. Blah, 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 down the road. I mean, it was a brutal review. Whatever. And Manning, the company that had published the book, was like, hey, what do you want to write a book? What do you want to talk about? And I was like, okay, I want to talk about code generation. So I ended up writing a book called Code Generation in Action, which...
Oh, nice.
Whatever.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Jack, we filled the whole time.
I know.
We did. Look at us go.
Yeah. Do you want to get lunch?
Yeah, I want to get lunch.
Okay.
Of course I want to get lunch.
All right. Do stuff, tell people.
So also, for anybody who's
is a good
interested,
t-shirt,
all the links that we
actually.
shared today... Yeah, it is.
I think kind of like somebody pulling ratchet and then pen or something like that.
If you are interested in any of the links that were shared today, or if you want to get involved in the next Web Dev Challenge, there's an open giveaway right now where...
It was really fun.
The prompt is open.
Cheat.
You can go...
It's a good thing.
I mean, you've got until July 8th, so you have more than 4 hours. You can go learn the thing. You got to build a retro games themed app using AWS Amplify. That's the whole requirement. If you turn something in that functions before July 8th, you're going to get entered to win a full desk setup. We're working with UgMonk for that. It's super cool. If you haven't seen the Gather collection, you should check it out.
8-bit, 2D,
8-bit,
Sprite.
2D. It could be, I mean, you don't even have to do that. You could just make like a fan forum for like Donkey Kong Jr., right? Like you could do whatever you want.
Ooh, or like one of those text-based adventure games. Remember those?
You could make one of those. You can make a scoreboard for speed runs. You could make a, like I think in the show itself, one person built a game. The other three
games
of us,
are hard.
The other 3 of us built things that were like support.
to really do a game
support
from front to
systems
end is actually
or communities around games, right? And so lots
Learn
of fun
state
stuff
machines.
there. State machines.
That's very handy for games.
But yeah, so if you're interested, you can do that. Get in. The Discord is up on screen, so you can join that, and all the details are in there. But yeah, have a lot of fun with it. The next episode of the Web Dev Challenge is coming out in about 2.5 weeks. which will be this retro games challenge. Then we got another one coming after
That's
that,
awesome.
which is going to be great. I'm not going to spoil the fun on that one yet, but there will be another giveaway challenge. So, keep entering.
Dude, this is amazing. You really.
I'm trying, man.
I am blown away by you.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. But yeah, cheat. It's a good thing, Jack.
Well, somebody tells you what the technology is, and
Yeah,
then they tell you what the challenge is 2 months ahead.
And the goal is never.
You'd be insane not to cheat.
Yeah, the goal isn't to test
I mean, like-
your instant comprehension. The goal is to test what you can do in a 4-hour time span.
I mean, give me a break. Like if you've got like some sort of like company hackathon, like how many times of course you're gonna go in, you're gonna know what your tech stack is, you're gonna have some
Right.
basic idea, you're gonna have to talk through with your team what your ideas are. Like this is 101.
Any suggestions for an LLM to access a personal knowledge database? I don't know.
Yeah, no,
it's in the
totally.
browser now, right?
Oh yeah, well yeah, there's that. But like actually, so I just wrote an article last night while I was watching House of the Dragon.
Oh, dope.
Where no, actually I think it was like whatever, doesn't matter. Where I was like talking about how to use Postgres and OpenLlama.
Oh, you dropped this one, right?
Yeah, to
Yeah,
go through
where-
to go and basically index text. So yeah, you basically chunk up your personal knowledge base, and then drop that into Postgres in this case. More recent versions of Postgres, I think actually like since 0.70 or something like that, have built-in vector search. It'll walk you through all the things on how to put together the vector search. And yeah, it's really good. Basically what it's doing is it's not doing like a keyword search anymore, it's doing a conceptual search.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like as I say, like when in the article, I've downloaded, I put everything in Aliens, the original 1986, I want to say, classic movie. All the lines, and they're all awesome because it's Aliens. And I searched for food, and it came up with the cornbread line. Yeah, I guess you didn't like the cornbread either. But like, but it's great because like you can imagine that like you come at it with these terms that are not like they're not precise, but it gets you in the zone. That's one of the cool things that like it's not keyword search. It gets you in like it uses these embeddings and cosine search and to actually like give you more conceptual stuff. And I think you had it spot on actually, and I want to do more on this, which is it would be great to actually look through our YouTube comments and be able to like look for concepts and say like, oh, what are people interested in? Are they interested in Next.js? Are they interested in Vue? Are they interested in React? Or are they I mean, yes, those are keywords, but like, also be able to hit it with like, basic programming concepts, stuff like that, and like figure out like what are folks interested in.
Right.
'Cause that's that as content creators are all trying to ride waves, right? Like, what are you guys interested in? Because then we'll want to make content about that, so we get lots of views and all that.
Right. And it's all
Looking through YouTube comments is a good way to make yourself depressed.
it depends.
Not his
It
comments.
depends. I will say
Your
I'm not
comments
sure-
on that web dev challenge. I mean,
I don't know.
It was like you were like the messiah. Like it
I
was
don't know
like,
what
where the what?
I'm
I don't
not-
get comments like this. My comments are like this is wrong, whatever, and they're like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
I truly don't understand what is different about the way that I've built a community, but like
It's just
y'all
love.
are
It's an outpouring of love for this guy.
Well, it's like an outpouring of love for the community in general, right? Like people they're kind, they're motivated, they're generally constructive.
You guys are awesome.
It truly like
My guys are great too.
I
I
am-
will say. I think it's because I always like I want you to tell me when I'm wrong. So
I think
they
you're,
do.
You're also diving
Crazy.
into like much more like technical nitty gritty.
That's I don't
and
know
so
actually. I think
Well,
you gave me some nitty gritty. Like I distracted you from the nitty and the gritty, but
That's true.
it's been a fun Tuesday morning. It's
It
great.
has been a wonder, except for Vinny. Vinny is the worst now.
Oh, Vinny.
No, I love my
you,
cadre
Vinny.
of Vinnies.
Come over to my channel. You can criticize me all you want.
Anyways, Jack, this has been great. We are over time now, so
Okay.
let's wrap it on up. But y'all, thank you so much for hanging out on a Tuesday morning. I hope that you are feeling excited to go out and build something.
Yeah,
and remember,
do it.
any of the links that we shared are in the Discord. The details about the giveaways are in the Discord. Really, like, the Discord's the place to be. You can hang out with Vinny, or if you don't want to hang out with Vinny, you can go into a channel that he's not in. So
You're gonna have to explain to me the whole Vinny situation, but okay.
I get harassed by Vinnies. They've formed a coalition.
There's multiple Vinnies?
Multiple Vinnies, yeah.
Oh,
We
God.
got V-Dog, we got Vinny Code, and then we got one more Vinny out there. So they're out there.
And they're not your
harassing me.
cousins.
No.
Okay.
Jack, do you go live on Twitch?
I do not. I should, right?
You're YouTube live, right?
Yeah. When I do live, it's on YouTube, but I don't do it as much as I should. And as I say, like, I want to have more of a relationship with my community than I do, and I really should. That's my thing, you know.
It's very, very, very nice. Leave the general
Yeah.
channel so it's a safe
Any
space.
guy. What? I will leave the general channel so it's a safe space. Aww.
This is a Vinny free zone. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. We will see you all on Thursday. We got a show coming up. Wait,
And I swear I will not bust in on.
hold on. Do we have a show on Thursday?
I won't mess you up.
No, the Thursday's the 4th of July. That's a holiday in the U.S. We've
Oh,
got
right. Yeah.
So I'll be back next Tuesday, and then we've got another Learn with Jason coming on the 11th, which is going to be a lot of fun. So thanks, y'all. We'll see you next time.